641. Hatching Moon Pokemon. After transmitting the intelligence back to Konoha, Mu Yue set up camp with his troops nearby and waited for orders. Handling so many prisoners was no small matter. "Teacher Mu Yue, are you free now?" Obito asked, approaching Mu Yue's tent. "Yes, come in," came Mu Yue's voice from inside. Obito stepped in only after receiving permission. Mu Yue sat with a scroll in his hands, apparently reading. Obito squinted and caught a glimpse of a familiar word, something like Izanagi. He scratched his head awkwardly. "Sorry, Teacher Mu Yue, was I interrupting your study?" Obito asked. Mu Yue put the Izanagi scroll down and smiled. "It's all right. I understood that jutsu long ago. I just felt like reviewing it again." After Danzo Shimura's death, Mu Yue had inherited not only Root's visible assets, but also some of Danzo's secret collections. Among them was the Uchiha clan's forbidden ninjutsu, Izanagi. Obito nodded. "I wasn't here to bother you, actually. I wanted to ask some questions, if you don't mind. At the start of the battle, why did you split our forces? The hidden mist ambush should have been unexpected, right?" Obito had gone back over the intelligence he had, trying to learn from Mu Yue's decisions. There were things he couldn't explain. From most people's reactions on the field, Mu Yue's foresight had seemed almost prescient. But Obito felt shortcomings in his own understanding. For such a major tactical choice, Mu Yue shouldn't have kept it from the deputy commander or the department squad leaders. Mu Yue cocked his head. "Have you been studying tactics lately?" Obito nodded. "Yes, I don't lead a squad now, but I don't want to always follow you, Teacher Mu Yue. My dream is to become Hokage. If Konoha faces danger, I might have to command in battle." "That's a good mindset," Mu Yue said. "But this battle isn't the best case study. The main reason I split the forces was because Advisor Yan's defeat revealed a detail. Iwagakure's intelligence capabilities may be stronger than ours. I planned accordingly." He paused, then added quietly, "And to be honest, I had been fishing from the start. Encountering Yagura Karatachi was something I expected." From the outside, the battle seemed to prove only one thing: how powerful Mu Yue was. In truth, he had set a trap and counted on his own strength to carry it through. Obito's expression shifted to one of dawning comprehension. There were pieces of information he hadn't known, details of Advisor Yan's fight and the intelligence team's struggles, and even with everything revealed, he concluded the required personal strength was enormous. "Even with 10 more years of training, I might barely match that," he thought. "Thank you, Teacher Mu Yue. I won't keep you," Obito said, standing to leave. A sudden green glow filled the tent. Obito turned and saw a Pokemon egg radiating a soft, healing green light, like the glow he'd seen when Charizard hatched, but green. Mu Yue watched it calmly. "Looks like it's about to hatch," he said. When the light faded, a small, pale green creature revealed itself. Its head was rounded like an onion with large blue eyes framed by thick black rings. 2 thin green antennae with blue tips sprouted from its forehead. Tiny, translucent wings protruded from its back. Its hands had 3 fingers. Its feet were smooth. It looked like a fairy from a children's story. "That's Celebi," Mu Yue said, recognizing it instantly. "A legendary beast." He wondered if the creature retained its time and space travel ability after localization. Celebi wasn't the most fearsome combatant among the legendary beasts, but its ability to travel through time and space, and even take others with it, made it extraordinarily valuable. Mu Yue expected the localization process wouldn't strip that core trait. Abilities generally remained, only adapted to chakra-based systems. Obito peered in. "Teacher Mu Yue, is that your nun beast? It looks like it can only use medical ninjutsu." Celebi chirped. A bright, happy sound fluttered over and rubbed its head against Mu Yue's face. Mu Yue stroked it and answered, "Don't be fooled by how cute it is. It's quite powerful." Relative to other legendary beasts, Celebi's combat prowess was modest. Compared to ordinary Pokemon, and certainly to most ninjas, it was strong. Celebi hopped onto Mu Yue's shoulder and lifted its head, as if telling Obito not to underestimate it. Obito inspected the little creature, baffled. It looked delicate. Where did its power lie? Trusting Mu Yue, he shrugged, said his goodbyes, and left the tent. Mu Yue checked Celebi's panel. Name, Celebi. Chakra, 102,000. Skills, Wood Release, Proficient. Space-Time Power, Beginner. Yang Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Mastered. Yin Release, Proficient. Water Release, Proficient. Earth release proficient, telekinesis. Pokemon tended to have large chakra reserves, but Celebi hatching with 102,000 chakra still made Mu Yue feel a little emotional. He had worked long and hard to reach 100,000. Celebi's space-time power confirmed Mu Yue's expectation. It had kept its time travel ability. Time travel was dangerously potent. Mu Yue thought about possibilities. If he'd had a Celebi when he first transmigrated, he could have gone back to teach Naruto at the academy or even seek out Hashirama. But changing the past risked erasing oneself. Better to be cautious. Mu Yue signed a contract with Celebi, split a shadow clone, and used Flying Thunder God to teleport to a secluded spot to test it. Panels only told part of the story. Real demonstrations were necessary. Using his Byakugan, Mu Yue located a wild boar, wounded it with a kunai until it was near death, and had Celebi heal it. Under the green light, the boar's wounds knit and vanished, leaving no scars. The creature bolted away, alive and whole. Healing is its specialty, Mu Yue thought. The newly hatched Celebi's healing already outclassed Rin Nohara's melodic. He tested wood release next. Though Celebi's proficiency was low, with over 100,000 chakra backing it, the output was more than enough to handle a jonin. Mu Yue decided not to test the space-time ability by traveling through history. Celebi was fresh from its egg and unfamiliar with its powers. The last thing he wanted was to accidentally drift into the age of the Six Paths, or Kaguya. Instead, he mused, if he combined dragon veins with Celebi's space-time power, could he target a precise parallel world? A parallel world had fewer risks of butterfly effect paradoxes than traveling to the distant past. He tried scanning Celebi via transformation and then used transformation himself to copy the listed abilities. Space-time power did not appear on his panel. As expected, Mu Yue said. Transformation had limits. It could copy Sharingan-like techniques or elemental releases, but not the Rinnegan, and time-space travel ranked even higher. Mu Yue ended the clone, returned to camp with Celebi, and absorbed the clone's memories. No one had come asking about the green light. It made sense. The hatch glow was bright but not spectacular, and the tent shielded most of it. Besides, it was Mu Yue's tent. Few people would bother. He brought Celebi out to meet his disciples. After all, his nin beast would be around Obito and the others a lot now. Teacher Mu Yue, what kind of nin beast is that? It's so cute. Rin Nohara beamed. Celebi chirped happily and circled her. You can call it Celebi, Mu Yue said. There could only be one Celebi here, so the name fit. Obito turned to Kakashi with a mischievous grin. Kakashi, you want to bet on how strong Celebi is? No bet, Kakashi replied without looking away from the little creature. Why not? Obito asked, puzzled. Because it's teacher Mu Yue's nin beast. Kakashi's tone was flat. He also suspected Obito was up to something. The moment Obito opened his mouth, Kakashi could guess his intent. Obito had no reply. Kakashi's answer made sense. One day later, the reply from Konoha arrived. Mu Yue gathered his disciples and 400 shinobi and set out for the grass country to reinforce Jiraiya. At the Konoha forces' encampment in the grass country, Jiraiya sat in his tent, frowning over a map. Iwagakure had once again shown baffling intelligence capabilities. Jiraiya suspected a spy, though he had combed his forces clean without finding one. They've really developed some strange techniques, he muttered. If only they'd put this effort into better uses. Iwagakure's ability to mask chakra was worrying. Even Sage Mode couldn't easily detect it. Jiraiya had already requested Mu Yue be sent. Mu Yue's sensory ninjutsu could pierce their concealment, and Mu Yue himself was a rare powerhouse on the field. Mu Yue's arrival was exactly what Jiraiya wanted. Half a thought drifted elsewhere, an idea for his next book. A top-tier powerhouse, disillusioned with the village, gives up his post to teach at the academy, he mused, fingers to his chin. At first, he treats teaching as nothing more than a job, but through interactions with students. Jiraiya smiled at the image, then pushed the diversion away. No, now I need to think about defense. Protecting Konoha came first. After Mu Yue arrived at Jiraiya's camp with his team, the old sage personally came out to greet them. Mu Yue, you finally made it, Jiraiya said with a laugh as he walked up. The moment he saw him, Jiraiya visibly relaxed. Mu Yue was young, but he'd never let a mission fail, reliable to the point of being a household name. Mu Yue, please inspect my unit first. We can talk afterwards, Jiraiya added. He'd already ordered his troops to assemble so Mu Yue could appraise them as soon as he arrived. Understood. We'll inspect now. Mu Yue nodded and sent his team to handle the camp duties while he and his disciples followed Jiraiya to sweep for spies. Appraisal technique. Brief readouts flashed through Mu Yue's mind. Name, Kano Masateru, Chakra 5200. Name Hugayo, Chakra 7200. Mu Yue swept the entire Konoha contingent stationed in the Land of Grass. He found no white Zetsu, no infiltrators detected, he reported. They either fled beforehand, or they used another method to steal our information. Appraisal technique didn't lie. Even potent transformations couldn't hide from it. Mu Yue suspected Madara Uchiha had obtained intelligence about his arrival and pulled the white Zetsu back. Moving with a sizable force made them easy to track. Jiraiya smiled and shrugged. Maybe we should have assembled earlier. But it's fine. At least the force is finally clean. Clean was what mattered, whether spies had been caught or scared away. He led Mu Yue and the others into the tent used as a meeting room and briefed him on the enemy. The Iwa force is commanded by an old acquaintance, Roshi, captain of Iwagakure's demolition corps, Jiraiya said. Besides Roshi, watch Han and Kitsuchi. Han's a Jinchuriki. He can fully transform and fire tailed beast balls. Kitsuchi is the third Tsuchikage's son. His earth release is very powerful. Doesn't Iwagakure have two Jinchuriki? Where's Roshi, the Four Tails? Obito asked, curious. He'd fought Iwagakure several times and knew their intel. Jiraiya shook his head. He hasn't shown up. He could be off-field or still hiding. Very few know Roshi's whereabouts. Even Onoki doesn't know his exact location. Mu Yue knew the same intelligence, but couldn't reveal it. It would be impossible to explain otherwise. Recon reports the Iwa force at about 1,600 men, Jiraiya continued, while we have around 1,100 combined. He frowned. Our reinforcement numbers were low, only about 400 supporting troops. Obito chuckled. It's only 1,600. Uncle Toad, you handle that Jinchuriki, and Teacher Mu Yue can mop up the rest. Jiraiya laughed and patted Obito's back. He knew Mu Yue's reputation. After all, Mu Yue had been the turning point against 2,000 Iwa troops in the last fight. Much of that credit came from using spy intel to lure the enemy into a trap. But when he looked at Mu Yue's disciples, Jiraiya noticed even calm, rational Kakashi didn't correct Obito's teasing. Mu Yue tapped Obito's head with 2 fingers. When did I ever really fight 1,600 alone? Do you think Yamaki and the others are just air? He said. To be fair, the Konoha troops had helped, blocking the Mist's retreat and creating distractions. Without them, he'd have burned more chakra. Obito scratched his head. Close enough. Most people around camp say we won entirely because of you, Teacher Mu Yue. Hearing about Mu Yue's recent battle, Jiraiya leaned in. You fought a hidden mist ambush with half your force, and then used wood release. What was it called? Tree World Advent? Art. Advent of a world of flowering trees? Obito went on excitedly, painting the scene. Jiraiya looked stunned, as if dreaming. Wood release on this scale from Mu Yue? He pinched Obito's cheek to check reality. Ah, that hurts, Obito protested. Jiraiya rubbed his chin and grew serious. So you can use large-scale wood release. That's a huge threat to an entire force. Mu Yue nodded. If the enemy gathers, I can use Art Advent of a world of flowering trees to release pollen that puts people into coma. He didn't elaborate further. Jiraiya thought back to Teed. He planned he'd prepared before Mu Yue arrived. Use his troops as bait to lure the Iwa force into a trap while Mu Yue flanked. The spies' premature withdrawal had ruined that. But now, with Mu Yue's strength, elaborate maneuvers seemed unnecessary. If they met the enemy, they would win. If they didn't, they would search. Absolute power made strategy simpler. Jiraiya regarded Mu Yue, measuring him. If he hadn't already met Nagato with his six-path sage eyes, he might have wondered if Mu Yue was the child of prophecy. Mu Yue's talent reminded him of an amplified Minato Namikaze. If he kept this up, he could become a legend. Why don't you form a small elite squad and operate freely? Jiraiya suggested after a moment. Mu Yue agreed. It was exactly what he wanted. Dividing forces like he had on the Hidden Mist battlefield, he worried less about defeating opponents than about not running into an opponent he couldn't handle. With wood release perfected, even a fully transformed Jinchuriki would be hard-pressed to threaten him, unless that Jinchuriki was Kurama. After the meeting, Mu Yue called to his disciples. "You all have the repair secret medicine I gave you, right?" Each of them opened their hands to show a black pill. "Yes, teacher. You reminded us back in Konoha," Obito said. "Good. That medicine heals physical injuries instantly, pulls you back from the brink," Mu Yue said, satisfied. On the first day in the grass country, Mu Yue rested and handled camp business. His men had undergone long marches and needed recovery. On the second day, he and Jiraiya selected the elite team, 100 soldiers total, 60 from Mu Yue's support unit, and 40 handpicked by Jiraiya. Jonin, Special Jonin, and Seasoned Chuunin made up the group. They ran a brief coordination exercise that afternoon. On the third day, Mu Yue led the elite squad out on their first operation. The first few missions went smoothly. They routed 8 Iwa detachments without casualties, killing 34 Iwagakure ninja in total. Then an unexpected trap hit them. While pursuing a 200-man Iwa unit, Mu Yue's team suddenly found themselves surrounded. From the forest surged a flood of Iwa soldiers, cutting off their path. As expected for the famed Rieyang Mu Yue, so bold to come into the war zone with only 100 men, a calm voice called out from within the Iwa lines. A burly Iwagakure shinobi stepped forward. "Iwa Fist Kitsuchi," Kakashi murmured, recognizing the third Tsuchikage's son. Obito bristled. "Teacher Mu Yue fought 2,000 before. Don't talk like he can't handle this." Kitsuchi blinked. He'd meant no insult. He'd simply been assessing the other side. He gathered chakra, pragmatically preparing to clear the way. Mu Yue counted the opposition. "Only 900? That's even easier," he thought. With the reach of his Kenbunshoku Haki-type perception, it wasn't a real ambush, more like bait in a fishing net. One Iwagakure Jonin whispered, baffled. These Konoha troops surrounded didn't look frightened. If anything, they actively wanted to fight. He and his comrades had only acted now because they'd spent the last day gathering intel and making sure this wasn't some Konoha trick. Intelligence on Mu Yue had been scarce. The hidden mist had been dealt with so swiftly that few knew the full story. Kitsuchi and many others gathered chakra and fired. Earth release, rock iron cannon technique. Rocks spat like cannonballs. Iwa's best unit ninjutsu slammed forward. Earth release, earth flow wall. Water release, water formation wall. The Iwagakure warriors rapidly formed defensive bulwarks. The Konoha protective nets, outnumbered, were pounded to pieces. Mu Yue finished his hand seals. Wood release, tree world advent. A vast, living surge of wood release flowed through the land. The soil writhed, and thousands of tiny roots burst from the earth, radiating outward like a spreading web. Thick trunks erupted up, maturing into tall trees in moments. Where there had already been forest, it became dense to the point of menacing. Sunlight filtered red dimly through a choking canopy, but under Mu Yue's tree world advent, the Iwagakure men felt only cold dread. Wood release? Kitsuchi's eyes widened. He'd heard legends. He hadn't expected to witness another shinobi capable of large-scale wood release. He was astonished. Mu Yue used the new timber to block the rock iron cannon barrage aimed at his troops, then directed roots and branches to bind and crush the Iwa soldiers. His elite team flowed in to exploit the opening. Most of them had already seen Mu Yue's wood release and adjusted to its scale. The battlefield flipped in an instant. Some Iwa ninjas were entangled before they could react. Others were worn down by the combined pressure of the trees and Konoha blades. Kitsuchi concentrated, preparing a massive earth release to try to tear Mu Yue's creation apart. But Metkai, who'd been watching Kitsuchi from the start, charged and threw himself in front of the Tsuchikage's son before the technique could finish. Mu Yue was about to team up with Metkai when a new sense prickled across the field. He looked north. Whoosh! Before anyone could see a trace, a black-robed figure used body flicker and appeared in the center of the battlefield, standing openly and staring straight at Mu Yue. Let's begin. In the dim cave, Uchiha Madara sat cross-legged, eyes closed. Before him stood a woman wearing a grass ninja forehead protector, half her body consumed by writhing black matter. Yes, Lord Madara, Black Zetsu said, bowing respectfully. He had invaded the grass ninja's body and now controlled it. Dragon life reincarnation. Under Zetsu's control, the grass ninja formed hand seals. Then, with palms glowing with life, Zetsu placed them on Madara and poured the grass ninja's life force into him. Under that surge, Madara's pale, wrinkled face took on color, his deep lines smoothing as vigor returned. The grass ninja visibly withered, aging rapidly into decrepitude. When her life was spent, Black Zetsu withdrew and asked, "Lord Madara, how do you feel?" Dragon life reincarnation was their contingency. Ordinary life transfer might temporarily bolster a body, but it couldn't truly restore one's prime. "My power is returning, not to peak but sufficient," Madara said with casual detachment, opening his eyes. He was still far from his true prime, but his opponent would not be Hashirama this time. He would be Hayate Mugetsu. That would do. According to White Zetsu's reports, Hayate Mugetsu's forces should be clashing with Iwa's troops soon, Black Zetsu explained. After you absorb the Outer Path statue's chakra and acclimate to this body, you'll likely meet Mugetsu after a major battle. Madara snorted. Why bother wasting time? He walked to the Outer Path demonic statue and began forming seals. He had been a prodigy in his youth. He didn't need elaborate plots. As he molded chakra, a beam of light shot from the statue's mouth and struck him. He then looked to the spiral-bodied White Zetsu, Tobi, the one who could expand and envelop others to augment them. Madara knew that to recover enough of his former strength, he needed not only the grass ninja's life force and the demonic statue's chakra, but also Tobi's enhancement. Tobi immediately understood and expanded, wrapping his body around Madara. Madara clenched a fist, a thin smile crossing his lips as sensations he hadn't felt in years returned bit by bit. "Lord Madara, how does it feel to need relief?" Tobi asked with idle curiosity. "Shut up," Madara said flatly. He wouldn't have his name tarnished by trivial talk, especially not in front of Hayate Mugetsu. "Where is Hayate Mugetsu?" Madara asked. "Greenwood Forest area," Black Zetsu replied. "But Lord Madara, do you really not need time to get used to this power?" "Do I not know my own body?" Madara answered, then released a burst of chakra and shot from the cave straight toward Greenwood Forest. He was eager to test this second wood-release ninja. Black Zetsu watched him go with a faintly displeased expression. How arrogant, to throw himself in like that when Zetsu had planned everything. But he thought, it's just Hayate Mugetsu. He shouldn't be a problem. As Madara neared Greenwood Forest, he locked onto the strongest chakra signature there, the golden-haired ninja. He fixed his gaze on Mu Yue. Mu Yue returned the stare, meeting the three Tomoe Sharingan and quickly assessing the black-robed figure who had entered their fight. Chakra, 30 Chim Potential, SS+, 6 Paths Bloodline, Hashirama Cells, Basic Talent, Skills, Fire Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Proficient, 13,650,000, Earth Release, Proficient, Water Release, Proficient, Wind Release, Proficient, Lightning Release, Yin, Yang, Wood Release, Proficient. It was the strongest panel Mu Yue had ever seen, chakra exceeding a tailed beast, and SS+ potential. What surprised him was that Madara's fire release hadn't reached perfect level. Madara's fire release was competent but not legendary. His real strength lay in the combination of ninjutsu, the Sharingan, and immense chakra. If Sharingan were treated as a skill, Mu Yue guessed Madara's would be perfect. This isn't even his peak, Mu Yue thought. Still, it's exaggerated. No matter what method Madara had used to regain strength, he couldn't have to be fully restored to his prime. At most, he had a temporary surge. Otherwise, he wouldn't be building successors. He'd be hunting tailed beasts himself. Chakra, 896,000. Skills, Wood Release, perfect. Fire Release, perfect. Water Release, perfect. Armament Haki, perfect. Lightning Breathing, perfect. Water Breathing, perfect. Looking at his own panel, Mu Yue sighed. 896,000 chakra could crush most shinobi, but against Madara's nearly 40 million, it was nothing. He simply hadn't had the time to develop. If he and his disciples had another decade, Mu Yue might have closed the gap. Nagato's contribution was a huge part of his current strength. Without him, the disparity would be even worse. They stared one another down for less than a second, and then both attacked. Swish! Swish! Their forms blurred, closing at speeds eons faster than ordinary eyes could track. Madara extended a black chakra rod from each palm. Mu Yue pulled Enma from his system space. These black chakra rods disrupted chakra and couldn't be struck by normal physical contact. Mu Yue exploded with chakra, gripping Enma and vaulting upward. The greatsword cut a shrill arc aimed at Madara's throat. Madara remained cool. He tapped his foot and shifted sideways at a hard angle, avoiding the killing blow with ease. He then thrust a black rod forward. The wind pressure from it smashed toward Mu Yue's waist. Mu Yue had already activated Transparent World and Byakugan to anticipate counters. He adjusted his posture and swung Unma in a brilliant silver arc. The sword met Madara's black rod midair with a loud clang and sparks. The impact pushed both back several steps. Madara noticed the chip in his rod and silently raised his estimation. Mu Yue's Taijutsu was better than he expected. Madara's sudden arrival grabbed everyone's attention. He had attacked Mu Yue on sight, and Iwagakure forces assumed at first that he was one of their own. Kitsuchi, only able to see Madara's back, thought this newcomer might be an Iwa shinobi sent by Reshi as a contingency. But as he watched, it didn't fit. Iwa's strong fighters were known to him, and none matched this man. Such strong chakra, and is that a 3-tomoe Sharingan? Kakashi said through Transparent World, his expression snapping serious. This black-robed figure had chakra stronger than a Jinchuriki and possessed an Uchiha Sharingan. Was this a transplanted Sharingan? Or an Uchiha who had never been known before? Why would an Uchiha attack Mu Yue on Iwa's behalf? Sharingan! Shisui and Obito both froze when they recognized the 3-tomoe. Then their faces filled with shock. Many Konoha shinobi nearby reacted with surprise and confusion. Sharingan was the Uchiha's unique bloodline limit. Some Konoha nin, close enough, decided to strike. Attacking a stranger who had just cut down comrades seemed necessary. If he were truly Konoha, he had to be eliminated. But their assaults were ineffective. Madara moved with terrifying precision, and with a few swings, he nearly killed the attackers. Mu Yue intervened in time, saving his people. "Looks like I should clear the weeds first," Madara said, eyes sweeping the battlefield. Chakra flared from his feet as he leapt up. Fire release, great fire annihilation. Madara gathered an enormous reserve of chakra in his throat, converting it into fire release and exhaling a colossal blast. A volcanic firestorm erupted, igniting countless trees and engulfing nearby Iwagakure shinobi. Water release, water formation wall. Some Iwa shinobi tried to use water release to block the flames, but their water instantly vaporized. The forest itself became fuel, and the firestorm roared on. Both Konoha and Iwa forces retreated hastily. Kitsuchi and Metkai were forced to abandon their fight and move to aid their comrades. Terrifying fire release. "Who is this?" Kitsuchi muttered, torn between curiosity and alarm. Mu Yue, who had used Flying Thunder God to rescue his subordinates, formed seals and unleashed a counter. He could have used fire to sell fire, but that would be a waste against someone with vast chakra. Efficiency mattered now. He poured out a massive torrent of water, an 8-meter wall that turned the forest into a shallow lake. The water spread wide, quenching the inferno. Mu Yue's disciples gathered. "Shisui, Obito, do you know him?" Kakashi asked in a low voice, staring at Madara. Both shook their heads. None of the Uchiha they knew matched this level of power. Even Fugaku was far below this man. "Everyone, be extremely careful," Kakashi warned. Obito locked his gaze on Mu Yue and Madara, resolve hardening. "Teacher Mu Yue, I will save you. I will not accept a world without you." Before meeting Mu Yue, Obito had been an undistinguished last-place student. Mu Yue had helped him become the pride of the Uchiha. Now Obito would repay him. Shisui thought through Madara's revealed abilities: Sharingan, unknown genjutsu strength, fire release beyond his own flame-breathing chakra mode. The more he considered it, the more powerless he felt. Madara's capabilities overlapped dangerously with his own. Only his unfinished blue flame might have some effect. Metkai recalled Mu Yue's teachings. Every harsh training session had been for moments like this. To protect what mattered, one must fight to the end, even at the cost of life. He was ready to open the 8 gates if necessary, even the gate of death. Watching Mu Yue extinguish the fire with water, Madara's expression soured. He wasn't troubled by the counter. He disliked being reminded of someone. "You can use water to put out fire, but how will you deal with this?" Madara ignored the surrounding stares. His blood-red 3-tomoe blazed, and a massive surge of chakra erupted. Blue chakra flames coalesced, forming a towering miniature giant with only an upper body. Over 8 meters tall, it had 4 arms, each arm grasping a blue longsword. Although Susanoo is a Mangekyo Sharingan technique, once mastered, it gains an unusual flexibility. Once perfected, it can be used even without an active Sharingan. Swish! Uchiha Madara guided the blue spectral warrior to swing a chakra sword, and 4 brilliant blue slashes streaked toward Mu Yue at blinding speed. Mu Yue tried to evade, but froze when he noticed the Konoha force behind him. Sizzle! Dazzling yellow lightning wrapped around Enma's blade, and Mu Yue answered with a lightning slash launched at incredible speed. The yellow and blue arcs met with an earth-shattering roar. The shock ripped the ground apart where they collided. Dust and debris exploded outward, trees shattered, and branches became flying splinters. "What kind of ninjutsu is that?" Obito asked, eyes wide. He'd seen jutsu that enlarged things, but a chakra-formed miniature giant was new even to him. He had to admit, despite its being the enemy's technique, it was spectacular. "If I recall correctly, that's called Susanoo," Shisui said, clenching his fists. "It's a power unique to the Uchiha." He'd studied clan tomes and knew something of the Mangekyo. Seeing Susanoo confirmed an Uchiha presence to anyone familiar with their lore. He didn't recognize the black-robed Uchiha in front of them, but now a fierce hatred flared in Shisui. If nothing else, this move would ensure the Uchiha were investigated, suspected, and blamed. Huh? A power only the Uchiha can use? Why haven't I seen anyone from the Uchiha clan do this before? Obito muttered, bewildered that such a cool jutsu could be exclusive. Kakashi, listening, looked thoughtful. Such strength coming from an Uchiha. Could this be the secret successor Madara trained when he left Konoha? In the village's and the world's understanding, Uchiha Madara had long since been slain by Senju Hashirama. A returning Madara was less likely than a hidden successor. Mu Yue blurred away, angling toward the Iwagakure contingent. "Yasakani no Magatama," Madara ordered. The 2 chakra-armed swords of Susanoo vanished and were replaced by a string of blue Magatama between its hands. With a casual flick, Madara sent them hurling like high-speed projectiles at Mu Yue. Mu Yue's Byakugan, with its near 360-degree vision, allowed him to dodge without looking back, but the Iwagakure Shinobi did not possess his speed or perception. "Earth Release, Earth Flow Wall," some Iwagakure ninja cast desperately. The thick earth barrier erupted up, but the Magatama shredded it in an instant and kept going. The surviving projectiles struck unlucky defenders. Some erupted into blood mist. Kitsuchi's eyelids jumped as he realized how perilous even observation had become. Madara's Yasakani no Magatama hadn't even touched Mu Yue's clothes, yet it obliterated scores of soldiers. "Pull back! Create distance!" Kitsuchi barked. He'd intended to sit back and see if he could take advantage of the chaos to finish Mu Yue and his men. A shameful but timed village mission. But if Mu Yue and Madara fought for any length of time, Kitsuchi worried his force would suffer catastrophic losses. He wisely retreated, and Mu Yue did not stop him. He'd drawn Madara's attention on purpose, not wanting to face a piled-on enemy. With Madara's show of strength, Mu Yue's subordinates also held back, fearful of interfering. On the field, only Mu Yue and Madara remained locked in combat. Madara again made Susanoo hurl Magatama, but then leaped out of its form and attacked Mu Yue directly from above. Fire Release, Dragon Flame Release Song. A surge of chakra erupted from Madara, and 4 jagged fire dragons spewed from his mouth, attacking from 4 directions. The air ignited and warped wherever they passed. The technique hit fast and from multiple angles, normally nearly impossible to dodge. If you couldn't withstand it, you died. Mu Yue's chakra reserves couldn't match Madara's, but he had an arsenal of refined techniques and counters. He silently shifted his breathing technique to water breathing, heightening it into water-breathing chakra mode. Water Release, say, Water Shockwave. He sealed his hands and transmuted a torrent of chakra into water release. A vast volume of water appeared out of nowhere, spinning and rising to form a 15-meter diameter vortex that sheltered Mu Yue. The fire dragons hissed and vanished under the onslaught of water as if they'd never been. Mu Yue wasn't done. He molded his chakra again. Water Release, 10,000 water dragons. The vortex stopped ascending and slammed outward into a tidal wave aimed straight at Madara. The wave towered over 60 meters, and then thick, hideous water dragons coalesced and charged from every direction. For the first time, the expression on Madara's face shifted. "I see why your water release is called the Dragon Flame Release Song in the intelligence files," he conceded. Seeing it on paper and witnessing it in battle were different things. Mu Yue's water release was indeed impressive. But this won't break my defense. Susanoo? Madara condensed chakra until a chilling blue light flared around him. The light dispersed, and where he'd stood, a towering chakra giant materialized. The complete body Susanoo this time, well over 20 meters tall. Its 4 blue chakra swords swung and shattered several water dragons, while the rest battered at its form. The wave's force was greater than Madara had expected. Even his third-stage Susanoo staggered and showed superficial damage, though Madara himself, perched within the Susanoo's head, remained unharmed. Wood release? Wood clone, Madara decided. Rather than throw fire at such a water-based assault, he used the Hashirama-derived wood release he'd gained, more efficient here than wasting chakra on futile fire techniques. 4 wood clones split from Madara's body. Once they were some distance away, they each condensed chakra and summoned their own Susanoo. Giants over 20 meters tall suddenly filled the battlefield. Madara laughed. Hayate Mugetsu, how will you deal with this? Mu Yue was already struggling against a single third-stage Susanoo. 5 of them, Obito gaped. This is cheating, he muttered. His own shadow clone couldn't even use blue flame. This black-robed Uchiha's clones were using Susanoo. Were they even using the same kind of jutsu? Shisui's pupils widened. The Uchiha texts had no record of shadow clones wielding Susanoo. Even all 5 combined wouldn't likely defeat one shadow of this enemy. The Konoha shinobi around them were stunned into disbelief. Some pinched themselves as if to wake. But it was real. Their faces burned from the wind, and the Susanoo's stomps shook the earth. This is the worst-case scenario, Kakashi thought, sweat beading on the hand that held White Fang. He'd made 2 possibilities before. Either Mu Yue wasn't in mortal danger, or his opponent was far stronger than anyone expected. It was the latter. Mu Yue was powerful, but his enemy was beyond imagination. After a moment of thought, Kakashi decided if Mu Yue couldn't handle this, they had to make space to escape. He activated lightning breathing and dashed back as if to leave the field. 4 dazzling blue slashes cut across his retreat path and forced him to halt. Kakashi's face was a grim mask. Even if they weren't combatants, their presence on the field risked making them a liability. If Mu Yue used Flying Thunder God to vanish, perhaps only Mu Yue would make it out alive, maybe dragging a few of his pupils with him. So this is why Teacher Mu Yue could still die even with the Flying Thunder God, Kakashi thought in anguish. He wanted to shout to Mu Yue to abandon them and run. He knew Mu Yue would never do such a thing, but standing by and watching him walk into death was intolerable. Then it's time for the green beast of Konoha to show himself, Metkai declared. Guy prepared to open the 8 gates at all costs. He might not beat Madara's main body, but he might take down a shadow and relieve pressure on Mu Yue. Compared to the towering chakra giants, the 1.8-meter Mu Yue looked tiny. Wood human technique. Mu Yue planted his feet and poured out the most formidable wood release he could muster. The earth trembled as vines and branches surged up, interweaving into a colossal wooden arete. The wood human rose like a mountain across the battlefield. Its scale made even the third-stage Susanoo beside it seem puny. An oppressive aura, stronger even than the Susanoo's, rolled across the field. The air felt as if it had condensed, and breathing became laborious. Konoha's shinobi stared, first in disbelief, then in joy. Against this wood human, Madara's Susanoo suddenly looked far from invincible. The wooden giant flexed once and with a single punch disintegrated a 20-meter Susanoo into motes of light. Another Susanoo circled behind the wood human and swung, but Mu Yue had sensed it long before. The wood human snatched the blue energy blade and crushed it in a single hand. A follow-up blow shattered another Susanoo outright. Under the raw, overwhelming pressure of the wood human, Mu Yue smashed through 4 Susanoo, leaving only Madara's main body and 1 Susanoo standing. The tide had turned. Is that really Ryeyang Mu Yue? Kitsuchi, who'd only retreated a short distance, gaped at the towering wooden figure, stunned. He was grateful the black-robed Uchiha had intervened, otherwise he and his unit might have all died. Sage Mu Yue is truly invincible, Obito breathed, relief flooding him as he watched Mu Yue destroy a Susanoo. And yet, amid the wreckage and his disadvantage, Uchiha Madara was smiling, smile turning into a wild laugh. This is getting interesting, ha! Uchiha Madara laughed as he watched the wood-human technique rise. Despite the trouble Mu Yue's plan had caused him, Madara found himself unexpectedly pleased. He and Danzo both had access to wood release of a sort, but Madara didn't count that as true wood release. In his eyes, Mu Yue, who had developed wood release on his own, was the real second wood release user. As such, Mu Yue's performance amused him. Not Hashirama level, but not bad, worthy of seeing the true Susanoo. Madara's grin spread and an immense surge of chakra erupted from him. Blue chakra swelled around him and gathered into Susanoo. The giant that had been only a little over 20 meters tall swelled rapidly, shaking the ground. 30 meters, 35, 40. Susanoo surpassed the height of Mu Yue's wood-human technique, growing until it was an astonishing 80 meters. It wasn't just size that changed. Brilliant blue chakra added a thick, armor-like layer to the giant, strengthening it further. When the Susanoo finished forming and the turbulent chakra settled, an unprecedented oppression rolled over the battlefield. The third stage Susanoo from before looked like a child next to the wood-human technique. Now even the wood-human technique looked small and frail before this towering blue colossus. All the Konoha shinobi stared at the terrifying blue giant in stunned silence, as if a god had descended. A kunai clattered from one ninja's hand. "What kind of enemy is this?" he whispered. If the black-robed man simply stood there and let them attack, they couldn't break through his defense, and with a few stomps, he could wipe them out. Even the legendary Hashirama and Madara felt small in comparison. "Can such an enemy be defeated?" a jonin asked, gripping his long sword until his hand trembled. Facing an 80-meter Susanoo, his legs nearly gave out. He had to force himself to stand. The gap between them and the black-robed man was larger than between a jonin and a civilian. Kakashi and Obito's tension spiked. Did he not take this seriously in the previous battle? Obito wondered, staring at the giant. The 80-meter Susanoo felt completely different from the 20-meter one, so different it seemed like a different jutsu. He shook off the thought. If it was different, then it meant Madara still had more power he hadn't shown. Lord Mu Yue. Shisui clenched his fists. He wanted to rush to help, but he knew that would only make things worse. If he might once have harmed the black-robed Uchiha with a blue flame sneak attack, there was no chance of doing anything now that the Susanoo had grown so massive. The gap is too big. Kakashi's brow was slick with sweat. No matter how he looked at it, he couldn't find a way to help Mu Yue. Even Might Guy, who could open the 8 gates, would be unlikely to turn the tide. At best, he could only open to the 6th gate right now. The Iwagakure force circling nearby was equally dumbfounded. "Lord Kitsuchi, perhaps we should retreat," an Iwa Jonin said. "This black-robed ninja is too powerful. Hayate Mugetsu and the rest will be killed, and this man doesn't favor Iwagakure either. Staying is too dangerous." Kitsuchi, seeing the blue giant and the wood-human technique, finally ordered a withdrawal. He could not gamble his subordinates' lives. Madara, however, wore a slightly dissatisfied look. "Only this. As expected, I may still need reincarnation to revive," he muttered, feeling his Susanoo. The Susanoo he currently used wasn't a full, complete body, no wings. His peak complete body Susanoo was over twice this size and could fly. Still, this would do. Mu Yue controlled the wood-human technique and charged at the Susanoo. But Madara cast the higher-level Susanoo too quickly. Mu Yue hadn't reached him before it was finished. Swish! Madara swung a giant blue chakra sword. The blade cleaved the air, a gust like a hurricane sweeping outward. The wood-human technique thrust its large hand up to catch the sword. Its palm exploded, and more than half its body was cut away. Dara didn't stop. His other arm swung the light blade toward the wood-human technique's head, where Mu Yue stood. Wind buffeted Mu Yue, ruffling his golden hair. Wood release, art, advent of a world of flowering trees. Mu Yue calmly released more wood chakra. The ground trembled as if something vast moved beneath. Thick roots burst out, writhing like snakes, growing into enormous vines. 3 of them lashed out and bound the swinging light blade, halting its advance. Other roots tangled Susanoo's other arm and struck at its body. Wood-human technique. Mu Yue pushed another wave of wood release. Roots surged up and fused into the wood-human technique, repairing and enlarging it. It was a powerful jutsu, one that could rival a complete body Susanoo, but Mu Yue lacked the chakra to match Hashirama at peak. Still, he could push farther than before. The wood human technique grew to 60 meters, no longer dwarfed by the Susanoo. "That's better. Let me enjoy this." Madara laughed, pleased that Mu Yue still had resources. Susanoo erupted, tearing through the vines and lifting the great sword. The air seemed to solidify. A chilling pressure followed the blade as it descended. The sword light streaked like lightning, splitting the sky. Mu Yue did not dare be careless. His Byakugan locked on the blade, the transparent world predicting its path. He used the wood human technique's giant palm to block. The two giants' collision sent shockwaves through the ground. The airflow threw some Konoha shinobi back, forcing them to brace with chakra. "Lord Mu Yue, you can do it," Obito cried, excited. If looks could kill, he would have stared Madara to death. Rin Nohara silently clasped her hands. Mu Yue might change history. In her world, Yamato had become Mu Yue's disciple. Perhaps here too, things could be different. Time travel could alter fate. The wood dragon on the wood human technique's shoulder lunged at Susanoo's head. Two chakra arms sprouted from the Susanoo and gripped the dragon, preventing its advance. Madara pulled hard, upsetting the balance. The wood human technique failed to hold the giant sword any longer and was dragged closer. Susanoo slashed, gouging deep marks into the wood human technique. Wood chips flew. Seizing the proximity, the wood human technique punched Susanoo, cracking its blue armor. The two giants, one blue, one green, exchanged blows, crushing the forest and turning the battlefield into craters. Both came away damaged. Mu Yue's construct was scarred and Susanoo's armor fractured. "Ah, what a feeling!" Madara's expression turned nostalgic. His rematch with Mu Yue reminded him of Hashirama. "In return, I will kill you cleanly." He poured more chakra into Susanoo. Cracks on the armor healed and its aura strengthened. He could tell Mu Yue's chakra reserve was far less than his own or Hashirama's. Mu Yue, panting on the wood human technique's head, paused, not immediately repairing his construct. Susanoo grabbed its blade with both hands and charged. Each step struck like a bomb. The wood human technique raised both hands to block, but this time the incomplete body couldn't bear the impact. The palms exploded. The greatsword cleaved the wood human technique in half from head to waist. The massive remains crashed. The Konoha shinobi watched in despair as their confidence crashed with it. Susanoo's greatsword looked like the Reaper's scythe. "We're done for," some muttered, certain even Mu Yue could not prevail. But others, those who had followed Mu Yue since the Hidden Mist battle, still clung to faith. Mu Yue, unaware of their thoughts, prepared a last, super-strong attack he had never used before. As Susanoo's blade fell, Mu Yue leaped from the wood human technique's head towards Susanoo's. Lightning breathing, full concentration. He shifted to lightning breathing chakra mode and pushed his perfect grade lightning breathing to the limit. Enma, his blade, appeared in his right hand, drawn from the system. The chakra Mu Yue had condensed turned into lightning release chakra. Purple lightning crackled along Enma's edge. Mu Yue's speed sharpened like a bolt. Almost instantly he was before Susanoo, staring at Madara. Madara watched, intrigued, but did not idle. He urged Susanoo's hand to seize Mu Yue. Mu Yue tightened his grip on Enma and poured everything into lightning breathing and lightning release, channeling more lightning into the blade. The sky itself responded. Thunder boomed as if drawn to Enma. Madara's face shifted. Susanoo's overwhelming hand lunged for Mu Yue. One thought cut. At barely 2 meters distance, Mu Yue swung Enma. Lightning exploded. Thunders rolled. A massive lightning beam blasted out, and Susanoo's reaching arm shattered into blue particles and scattered. Madara's features changed wildly. He poured all his chakra into reinforcing Susanoo's defense, but this was no economy version of Mu Yue's blade. It was his ultimate technique, consuming vast chakra, so much that Mu Yue had avoided using it in training for fear of exposure. The lightning tore through Susanoo's defenses, shattering its body. Blue fragments flew. Madara inside the Susanoo coughed blood and was flung out like a rag doll. Without his chakra supply, the remaining Susanoo collapsed and dissipated. A blue giant that had towered over the field vanished beneath the lightning. But the slash's destructive power did not stop. The moment the blade struck, the ground split into a deep chasm. Gravel flew, dust billowed, everything near the strike zone was pulverized. A black scar nearly 90 meters long gouged the battlefield. This one Konoha ninja gasped, at a loss for words. The other shinobi who had believed in Mu Yue shouted his name in exhilaration. Mu Yue had become a symbol of miracles. Obito laughed, fists clenched. He had already condensed his chakra to run in. He'd held back only to avoid interfering with Mu Yue. At worst, he would die with him. Shisui breathed hard. His Sharingan had been at peak just watching Mu Yue. Rin's tightly wound heart finally eased. Kakashi, relieved, let go of his tense vigilance. Even Metkai grinned and gave a thumbs up. Their journey to the land of Ruran had made them determined to change Mu Yue's inevitable fate. They had been ready to use everything to save him. Then the unexpected happened. Wood release, cutting sprigs technique. Madara, who should have been dead, appeared behind Mu Yue. Thick wooden spikes shot from an outstretched arm. Mu Yue reacted and cut some off with Enma, but others struck true. The wooden spears continued to grow as they pierced his body. Blood spurted. Mu Yue dropped Enma and fell to the ground. Everyone froze, unable to understand how Madara had survived the lightning slash. 8 gates. 5th gate, open. Metkai roared and activated the 5th gate, entering rock-breathing chakra mode. He launched a blistering whirlwind kick at Madara. Madara caught Metkai's leg, released chakra, and threw him like a bottle, shattering the ground. Madara ignored him, eyes locked on the pierced Mu Yue. Metkai's strength didn't warrant his attention. Others moved too. Obito's 3 Tomoe Sharingan flared, and he shifted into flame-breathing, launching a fiery punch. Shisui, Sharingan active, entered flame-breathing and condensed a blue, high-temperature flame. Kakashi drew White Fang, entered transparent world and lightning-breathing. Rin concentrated chakra for an exploding fist. Some jonin rushed in as well. "Do you wish to dance as well?" Madara asked, and chakra condensed into a second-stage Susanoo. An upper torso blue giant reappeared. Its hands swung, and its other arms formed energy orbs, blocking incoming attacks and sending the attackers flying. "To have forced me this far, even in this state? You deserve some pride, Hayate Mugetsu." "I won't forget you," Madara said, his remaining Sharingan fixed on Mu Yue. At the very last moment, he had used Izanagi, rewriting the outcome of his apparent death. Mu Yue had surprised him. He hadn't expected someone of this era to reach that level. Madara raised the blue greatsword toward the fallen Mu Yue. "Bastard, if you have courage, fight teacher Mu Yue fair and square." Obito spat blood and surged forward, unwilling to give up. He wanted Mu Yue to take a secret medicine that might heal him. If Mu Yue recovered, hope would remain. 8 gates, 6th gate, open. Metkai pulled himself from the crater and forced open the 6th gate, his power rocketing. He wanted to open the 7th or even the 8th, but couldn't. Mu Yue's disciples and the remaining capable subordinates swarmed to stop Madara. Wood release, wood clone. Madara ignored them and split himself into 5 wood clones. He sent them after the attackers and resumed his assault on Mu Yue. Fire release. Fire dragon flame bullet. One thought cut. Golden skyline. Fire release. Blue flame. Obito, Shisui, Kakashi, and the others threw everything they had at the clones and at Madara, abandoning conserving chakra. With other Konoha shinobi, they destroyed 1 clone, but 4 remained. Under the clones' counterattacks, Obito and the others were injured again and again. Obito was knocked down and could only watch, helpless, as the blue blade descended. Boom! The ground where Mu Yue lay split. His blood flowed, staining the earth red. In the 3 Tomo eyes of Madara, Obito, and Shisui, Mu Yue's life flickered like a candle and was snuffed out. 6:46. Open your eyes by 12. Uchiha Obito was already considered a successful ninja. At the Ninja Academy, he repeatedly placed first in practical exams. For his graduation internship, he completed an astonishing S-rank mission that left teachers and students speechless. Less than a year after graduating, he took the chuunin exams and advanced to chuunin, earning a reputation in Konoha for his performance. He went on dangerous missions, some as exciting as stories from ninja novels. A princess protection job turned into a pitched battle against rebels, though the princess herself was more temper than poise. He once investigated a lord of the Land of Fire and uncovered treason, protecting another nation in the process. That mission even involved something as incredible as time travel, which left Obito with disturbing knowledge. He went with Mu Yue to the East Bank battlefield in the Land of Fire, fighting the Hidden Mist invasion. On the battlefield, Obito's strength and reputation grew. he became known not only among Konoha shinobi, but also among many from the Hidden Mist. For his contributions, he was promoted to Jonin at the tender age of 10. He competed in a martial arts tournament that gathered the ninja world's prodigies. He finished second, though the champion Nagato was older by several years. Many in Konoha called him a super genius. Some Uchiha elders said he was the clan's future. Obito liked praise, but he never fully trusted it. All those admirers had appeared after he became strong. Only one person had been there before his rise, the one who made him into the genius everyone now praised. Before 4th grade, at the academy, Obito had been known, less kindly, as the Uchiha clan's dead last. A headache for teachers and looked down on by some peers. His grades weren't terrible in every subject, but they couldn't compare to other Uchiha, and the gap showed. Within the clan, no one openly called him a failure, but his peers mostly avoided him. He was an outcast among his own. Obito didn't care much. If they didn't want to play with him, he didn't want to play with them, and he had other friends. Still, he hated being the dead last. He had a dream, to become Hokage. A village leader could not be someone who had once been last. He had to be outstanding. The turning point came in the first semester of 4th grade. Obito remembered every detail of that afternoon because it changed his life and began a dreamlike period. He owed everything to Ikeya Yu. If Ikeya Yu hadn't asked Mu Yue to substitute teach, he wouldn't have met Mu Yue, wouldn't have had the extra lessons, and might never have become Mu Yue's student. Mu Yue's teaching seemed like magic. Under Mu Yue's guidance, Obito's abilities skyrocketed. His theory grades climbed from failing to passing to average and beyond. He left the dead last ranks and became a genius. Mu Yue's help didn't stop at training. When Obito was discouraged, Mu Yue noticed and consoled him. When he wanted to enter the youth ninjutsu competition to save face, Mu Yue crafted a special training plan. For his birthday, Mu Yue personally forged a kunai for him and even traveled to other lands to take photos of scenes Obito had wanted to see. Obito had more than one teacher at school, but there was only one master in his heart, Mu Yue. In Obito's eyes, Mu Yue was omnipotent, like a six-path sage. There was nothing Mu Yue couldn't do. How else to explain a chuunin-level instructor with such strength who could raise a dead last into a celebrity? How to explain Mu Yue devising so many powerful secret techniques at such a young age? So when the blue blade fell and blood splattered from Mu Yue's body, reality struck hard. There was no omnipotent ninja, not even the Mu Yue he had idolized. The Mu Yue who was everything to him could be killed. Impossible. Obito denied it outright. Mu Yue sensei is invincible, he can't die. The truly false thing is this world, something in him screamed. Huge tears streamed from Obito's blood-red three-tomo eyes like an endless spring. For a moment he lost all sense, of the people around him. Mu Yue was gone. Kakashi, Shisui, the enemies. He felt utterly alone on a barren plain. A burning ache filled his eye sockets. Why was he crying? Mu Yue couldn't be dead. Chakra raced uncontrollably through his eyes. His perception returned little by little. Mu Yue's body reappeared. Kakashi and the others returned. And the black-robed Uchiha stood there, too. Obito looked up and their gazes met. As expected of the one I chose, Uchiha Madara thought, watching the tomei in Obito's blood-red pupils rearrange into a shuriken-shaped pattern. Not everyone could awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, and even among Mankyo users there were differences in ocular power. Madara had picked Obito because of his strong emotions. Such passion, once bent toward darkness, would grant ocular power beyond the ordinary. As Obito activated the Mangekyo and his aura strengthened, a powerful presence rose from another direction. Madara glanced toward his contingency, Uchiha Shisui, whose Sharingan had also changed. Madara always had more than one target. In addition to emotionally rich Obito, the wildly talented Shisui was part of his plan. If Obito failed, he intended to switch to Shisui, though he hadn't expected both boys to become Mu Yue's disciples. Mu Yue-sensei. Shisui stared at Mu Yue's lifeless body, blood leaking from his eyes in crimson tears, unable to accept it. Shisui rarely used absolutes. He avoided words like most because they were too sharp. But if pressed to describe Mu Yue's place in his heart, there was only one answer. Mu Yue was the most important person to him. 10-year-old Shisui had been with Mu Yue for 4 years, nearly half his life. His parents had died when he was very young. He only knew them from old photos and from what others said about them. His uncle occasionally looked after him, but had his own family and missions. Before meeting Mu Yue, Shisui had been largely alone, training alone, studying alone, living alone. After Mu Yue came into his life, everything changed. After school, Mu Yue found time to teach him. When classes at the academy felt useless to him, Mu Yue still arranged shadow clones to guide him rather than leaving him to train alone. October 19th of Shisui's 6th year was the most unforgettable day of his life, his birthday. Mu Yue had been very busy with school and training, so Shisui hadn't told him. A birthday is just the day you were born. It doesn't have to be celebrated, he told himself. It was only self-comfort. In truth, he wanted Mu Yue to notice, to celebrate with him, but he hated troubling people, and Mu Yue already did so much, so he swallowed his hope and went home alone after training. He envied Obito then. Obito never overthought things. He would simply tell Mu Yue about his birthday. At his lowest moment, a miracle happened. Mu Yue somehow knew the date and had arranged a surprise at Shisui's home. Mu Yue learned to forge ninja tools, not for show, but to make Shisui's present, injuring his hand in the process. Shisui, who rarely cried, nearly broke down. He had heard others talk about parental love, but never felt it, until Mu Yue's gift. Mu Yue was not his father, but his care felt no less paternal. From that day, Shisui saw Mu Yue as a father figure. No, Mu Yue-sensei can still be saved. The secret medicine. Yes! Shisui remembered the restorative pill Mu Yue had once given them. He quickly took a black pill from his pouch. With his mangekyou open, Shisui flashed by with body flicker and dropped beside Mu Yue. He forced the pill into Mu Yue's mouth and tore away the wood-release branches that pinned him. Madara did not intervene. He watched coldly. His Sharingan told him the truth. Mu Yue was already dead. Utterly dead. No medicine in the world could bring the dead back. At best, it could restore some energy. Thanks to Shisui's effort, the black medicine flowed down Mu Yue's throat and seemed to take effect. Mu Yue's wounds closed as if healed, scars vanishing. Soon he looked uninjured, only he did not wake. Useless, Madara said through a voice-changing jutsu. He's already dead. Shisui's actions could only make the corpse look better. They could not change the fact of death. Mu Yue-sensei isn't dead. He's just exhausted and hasn't woken up yet. Shisui's blood-red Mangekyo glared at the black-robed Uchiha, as if trying to carve him into memory. He would find a way to revive Mu Yue. If Uzumaki Naruto and the others could travel through time, why couldn't he? If it meant getting lost in a timeline, he would. He wanted not only to bring Mu Yue back, but to avenge the black-robed murderer. Instead of fooling yourself, why not find a way to bring him back? Madara thought, then withdrew his gaze. With a burst of chakra, he upgraded his Susanoo into a towering 20-meter blue giant and sent it toward Rin Nohara. Killing Mu Yue was only part of the plan. Other steps needed adjusting. Rin remained crucial. As long as Rin lived, Obito would not fall fully into darkness. Madara had no intention of killing Rin here. Her death had to be twisted enough to break Obito's faith in the world, to convince him that only a new world could save everything. He planned to take Rin away. Die! Obito's hatred of the black-robed Uchiha reached a fever pitch. He funneled chakra into his Mangekyo. As Madara's Susanoo extended its massive hand toward the injured Rin, a sudden distortion rippled across the Susanoo's form. Madara reacted in an instant and leapt back. The distortion expanded, and half of the blue giant seemed to vanish as if erased into nothing. Is that his Mangekyo ability? Interesting. Madara regarded the Susanoo now missing half its body with curiosity. Mangekyo techniques varied, some duplicated others, most were unique, and whatever ability Obito had just displayed was one of the more formidable Madara had encountered. Shisui set Mu Yue's body down and launched himself at Uchiha Madara. By now, he had gathered enough chakra in his Sharingan. Uchiha Madara saw Shisui's approach and gathered chakra into his hands and feet, preparing to meet him head-on. Shisui moved with blinding speed. In an instant, he closed the distance until they were only 5 meters apart. Just as Madara ready to taijutsu strike, blood tears fell from Shisui's left eye. The world in Madara's vision shifted violently. The war-torn battlefield dissolved into a void under a blood-red sky. He found himself bound to a cross, and Shisui stood before him. Though this was Shisui's first time using Tsukuyomi, The moment he entered the genjutsu, he knew one immutable truth. Within that world, he controlled everything. Countless Shisui clones materialized, all brandishing long swords. Madara, still tied, did not look afraid. He laughed, wild, incredulous. Alarmed, Shisui hurled a barrage of phantom strikes at Madara. "Using genjutsu on me takes guts," Madara said, smirking. "In a clash of ocular techniques, striking first helps, but it isn't decisive. True victory came down to ocular power and mental strength." Crack! The Tsukuyomi world began to fracture, huge fissures racing across the illusion. Shisui's pupils pinched, agony flared through his left eye. The side effects of Mangekyo Sharingan were severe on their own. Having his genjutsu forcibly torn apart felt like torture. Madara grimaced, feeling a sharp pain in his head. If he had his own eyes, if he had even an eternal Mangekyo rather than his current state, he could have shattered Shisui's genjutsu without injury. That thought only made him more determined to accelerate his plan and revive at full strength. In his present condition, he might not even be able to beat the 5 Kage. Leaf-strong whirlwind. Metkai burst forward, intercepting Madara and preventing him from finishing off the wounded Shisui. Kakashi tightened his grip on the White Fang short sword and leapt in to help Guy block Madara. Obito rushed to Shisui's side, torn between checking his friend's condition and the chaos around them. "Shisui, are you all right?" "Nothing serious," Shisui said, shaking his head. He still had a trump card he hadn't used. With it, however grievous his wound, he could endure. It was a pity this power had come a step too late. "Go help Guy and the others. Madara's too strong." Madara's dark robe seemed to absorb the light around him. He activated Susanoo almost instantly. A colossal blue warrior with 4 arms flashed into being, each hand swinging a glowing blade. 4 slashes were launched at Kakashi and Guy. Susanoo! Kakashi and Guy had no choice but to respond. Metkai pushed his rock breathing to its limit, maximizing defense and force, and countered with a golden skyline slash. The blue energy detonated. Guy was thrown back, and his fingers bled from the strain. Kakashi poured chakra into the White Fang's short sword and met the assault. The blade shattered under Susanoo's might. Kakashi was knocked back 10 meters and landed hard, the broken pieces of the White Fang scattering across the ground. He stared at the ruined sword. More than a weapon, it had been a memento from his father. His most respected teacher had died fighting, and though they'd known the likely outcome, they'd been powerless to change it. Now the memento lay broken despite his use of the armament hockey technique. A cold helplessness rolled through him. Kakashi wanted to stand. The Yang seal still held some chakra for him to draw on. Pain screamed through his body, and he fell to his knees as soon as he tried to rise. His 9-tool pouch had been destroyed. Healing potions were gone. A dark voice echoed inside him. "Let it be. No matter how hard you try, you'll end up alone. History is fixed. Obito, Rin, Shisui, they'll all leave, just like teacher Mu Yue." He trembled. Fear wasn't of death itself, but of becoming the senior Kakashi Yamato had warned about, a man who let events crush him into resignation. At that moment, Rockruff, injured and steadfast, padded up and sat by Kakashi as if to guard him with its life. Despite being only a few years old, Rockruff's courage put Kakashi's faltering resolve to shame. "Rockruff," Kakashi's voice wavered. The dog's bark conveyed understanding. It took his torn clothes in its mouth and hauled him to his feet. Then melodic condensed shimmering water spheres filled with healing chakra and fired droplets at the injured shinobi. A single drop struck Kakashi and steadied him. His mobility returned. He hurried to Mu Yue's corpse and snatched up Enma, the sword that had been lying beside the fallen teacher. Enma felt right in the hand, perfect for performing one thought cut, perhaps even more fitting than the White Fang had been. As soon as Kakashi gripped Enma, his chakra surged uncontrollably into the blade, as if the sword wanted to draw everything from him. "Stop it!" he hissed, fighting Enma's pull. A shinobi drained of chakra would be finished. He resisted and tried to wrest back the stolen chakra. To his surprise, the flow back into him was greater than what he had just lost. Realization struck. Mu Yue had fought Madara with Enma. Some of his teacher's chakra remained bound to the sword. Even in death, Mu Yue was still aiding them. Kakashi released the Yang seal, tapped into its reserves, and entered lightning-breathing chakra mode. Transparent world flared to life within him. He gripped Enma, chakra crackling around the blade. One thought cut was meant to be executed with a mind as placid as still water, free of attachment. Kakashi's mind was anything but calm. He was driven by a furious desire to protect his friends and to break the fate he'd seen, but the cut still formed. Lightning poured along Enma's edge, thunder rolling as Kakashi gulped down most of his chakra and raised the sword. "I won't let you take this any farther," he roared. Madara, having just gravely wounded Guy, registered the new threat and tensed. If not for Izanagi, Mu Yue's thoughtless blade might indeed have ended him. Shisui shouted to Obito, "Kakashi's breaking through. Help him, Obito." Might Guy was too injured to continue. Obito, whose Kamui kept him fighting, was the least hurt. Shisui still had a trump card too. Together, they could open an opportunity for Kakashi. They attacked Susanoo from 2 angles, but Madara was not about to be caught unawares. He hadn't wanted to unleash his full power again. Doing so felt like using a cannon on a mosquito, and it taxed him in his present state. But seeing Kakashi and the others press on, he decided to throw everything into it. Blue chakra roared, and the 80-meter Susanoo reappeared, towering over the battlefield. He wouldn't dodge. He was confident the only real danger came from Obito's Mangekyo ability. Kakashi leapt in and slashed at Susanoo's abdomen with Enma. The blade scored a few long cracks, but Susanoo's massive fists thundered down to crush him. Kamui! Obito slammed out his technique, not to strike Madara's head as he'd hoped, but to warp Kakashi out of the path of the blow. Shisui teleported in beside Kakashi to give support. Yet Madara, ignoring most of them, drove a chakra arm straight toward Rin Nohara. Obito's Sharingan bled. He'd already pushed his Mangekyo too far. Tears mixed with the blood leaking from his eyes as the water mist of his vision blurred. Was Rin going to be taken from him too? The illusion's cruelty gnawed at him. "Rin," he called helplessly. Kakashi struggled to siphon more chakra from Enma for another one thought cut, but Enma was only a conduit. It couldn't produce chakra out of nothing. Shisui rushed, flickering pace blazing, trying to reach Rin in time to use his eye technique, if not to save her absolutely, at least to buy her another chance. Milotic gave a warning cry, gathering a great amount of water-nature chakra in its mouth and bracing itself against the onslaught. It was like a mosquito trying to stop a war engine. As frustration and hopelessness began to prick at Milotic, the creature, sensitive to changes in temperature, suddenly felt a fierce surge of heat. Just as everyone's attention snapped to the reappearing 80-meter blue Susanoo, a pale green figure materialized beside Mu Yue's fallen body. Celebi touched him gently with one finger and activated an earth-released chakra transformation, drawing Mu Yue beneath the ground. The instant Celebi's finger made contact, Mu Yue's corpse blurred like a mirage, and then, underground, Mu Yue opened his eyes. System messages scrolled through. Disciple Uchiha emotions are too intense. 6 Paths Bloodline activated. Mangekyo Sharingan awakened. Strength greatly improved. Reward obtained. Byakugan purity greatly increased. Disciple Uchiha Obito Chakrups 2000. Disciple's cultivation returned to master, gaining chakra pleasant. Disciple Uchiha Shisui's emotions are too intense. 6 Paths Bloodline activated. Mangekyo Sharingan awakened. Strength greatly improved. Reward obtained. Byakugan purity greatly increased. Disciple Uchiha Shisui Chakra plus 17,000. Disciple's cultivation returned to master, gaining chakra 60,000. Your Byakugan has met the evolution requirements and will evolve soon. Mu Yue opened his eyes and saw another line flash. 148,000 chakra. Byakugan about to evolve. He allowed himself a satisfied smile. Everything was exactly as he'd planned. Though the thoughtless blade had drained most of his chakra, it wasn't gone. He still had enough to maintain the Byakugan, and the Yang Seal still held unused chakra. If necessary, he had to die once in front of his disciples. The purpose wasn't spectacle, but strategy, to force Obito and Shisui to break through and awaken their Mangekyo Sharingan, to raise their strength, and to make defeating Uchiha Madara easier. Madara would never suspect Mu Yue had a Sharingan hidden beneath his glasses, a legacy from Root, one of the experimental Sharingan Danzo Shimura had used. Mu Yue quickly removed his glasses and retrieved a Byakugan from system space. Items the system rewarded could be stored there. A system-provided Byakugan could be kept in system space and later reinstalled. Mu Yue didn't hesitate. He dug out his dull right eye, set the system Byakugan into the socket, and used medical ninjutsu to seal and heal the wound. Izanagi, what a useful ninjutsu, Mu Yue muttered. Without Izanagi, faking his death convincingly enough to trigger his disciples' awakenings would have been far harder. Obito and the others had Sharingan and Transparent World. They had been watching. But Mu Yue had set up an automatic Izanagi within his Sharingan with a transcription seal, rewriting the reality of his death. Technically, he had died, yet reality had been altered. It had worked. It's time to finish this, he decided. He took stock of the battlefield through his freshly restored Byakugan. Madara had very few Izanagi uses left, and his condition was worse than at the fight's start. Mu Yue, by contrast, had a secret medicine, healed injuries, a strengthened Byakugan, and the Yang Seal still intact. The outcome was clear to him. Yang Seal release. The flame on Mu Yue's forehead flared red, and a massive surge of chakra spilled from the seal, automatically activating flame-breathing chakra mode. Celebi reappeared above ground, kunai gripped in both hands, and threw one toward Uchiha Madara at Mu Yue's command. Madara, who had been about to seize Rin Nohara, heard the cutting whistle and glanced over with barely any interest. A lone kunai, or even a large ninjutsu not cast by Mu Yue, was hardly worth his attention. After all, Hayate Mugetsu had been dead, and no one left on the field appeared to threaten him. Using Flying Thunder God technique, Mu Yue blinked into the air behind Susanoo and thrust his hands together. Fire release, blue flame, fire dragon flame bullet. Flame-breathing chakra mode amplified Mu Yue's fire release and physical power. Instantly, he completed countless detailed steps of fire nature transformation and exhaled vast, dazzling blue flames. They surged and twisted like living things, the heat suffocating. Sensing a jutsu potent enough to 3-10 him, Uchiha Madara turned. He saw Mu Yue unleashing the blue flame. Even a battle-hardened veteran like Madara showed a flicker of surprise. He had witnessed Mu Yue die under his Sharingan. No one with his eyes would have expected Mu Yue back without some extraordinary explanation. Still, he didn't pause to ponder. He abandoned Rin Nohara and resolved to deal with Mu Yue directly. Regardless of how Mu Yue had returned, the fact was undeniable. Mu Yue was not dead. Fire release, great fire annihilation. Madara condensed massive chakra into an orange-red inferno, launching it to counter Mu Yue's blue fire. He knew, from watching Obito, that the blue flame burned and destroyed far beyond normal fire release when compressed, but flooding the field would reduce its power. The two conflagrations collided in front of Susanoo with a thunderous roar, and a blast of superheated wind even buffeted Madara inside his armor. But what Madara expected to extinguish the blue with the red, the blue instead overwhelmed the orange-red. Mu Yue was no ordinary fire user. He had perfect-level fire nature transformation, flame-breathing chakra mode boosting him, and he'd unleashed S+ mastery-level blue flame at full force. The power and purity of his flame were immense. The blue flame shredded Madara's fire and struck Susanoo. The Susanoo that had barely trembled under Kakashi's thoughtless blade now flamed like a candle. Blue fire spread over its torso, bathing the battlefield in cold, brilliant light. Only the flames seemed to glow in the smoke-darkened air. Teacher Mu Yue. Obito, racing toward Rin, froze and stared with ecstatic disbelief. That golden-haired figure was undeniably his master, Sage Mu Yue, omnipotent and alive. Sage Mu Yue brought me back to the real world, Obito breathed. Shisui's eyes widened as joy overtook him. He, too, recognized the unique chakra and the signature tactics. This was their teacher, the man who'd merely been resting. Kakashi, exhausted and sitting beside Enma, exhaled and let his tension go. That single slash had nearly drained him, but seeing Mu Yue alive eased everything. The badly wounded Konoha shinobi who'd been preparing for death at the sight of Susanoo stared in stunned hope. If a re-election for Hokage were ever held, they thought Mu Yue would have to be supported. No one had saved them like he had. But not everyone relaxed. Madara reappeared not far behind Mu Yue, a second attempt at a sneak attack. Obito spotted him and shouted a warning. Mu Yue, of course, had seen as well and unleashed another furnace of high-temperature flame toward Madara. But because Madara had just used Izanagi, Mu Yue's fire passed harmlessly through his body. Madara wasn't injured. The shock of seeing so many errors in Zetsu's intelligence reports weighed on Madara. Hayate Mugetsu's true strength diverged wildly from the data he had. "This isn't what I expected," Madara muttered. Mu Yue's thoughtless blade and blue flame were far stronger than reported. If he had known, he would have waited to let Iwagakure exhaust Mu Yue's chakra and study his body first. Now his plan had slipped. He had to do something. He tried to provoke Obito by seizing Rin again, but with Mu Yue's Flying Thunder God technique in play, killing Rin outright proved impossible. A white Zetsu suddenly erupted from the earth, clutching 2 Sharingan. Madara's heart leapt. If he could seize another pair, Mu Yue might no longer be his match. He erupted chakra and formed a half-body Susanoo, its blue blade swinging toward Mu Yue as Madara reached for the stolen eyes. Celebi, quiet and quick, used telekinesis to lift the Sharingan into the air out of Madara's reach. Madara's fingers closed on empty air. Seizing the opening, Mu Yue condensed a massive amount of chakra. Fire release, blue flame, great dragon fire technique. A blue fire dragon roared into being and hurtled straight for Madara inside Susanoo. The attack tore through Susanoo's defenses. The smaller, more concentrated blue flame burned with more ferocity than Madara's attempt at matching fire with fire. The dragon struck Madara's form, hollowing a great wound through him. Black Zetsu watched from the shadows and scowled. He had seen Madara squander one advantage after another. The plan had put the enemy in the open and his allies in ambush, but Madara had been overconfident. Seeing that Madara would likely lose, Black Zetsu melted back into the darkness without looking back. He could not win a direct confrontation with Mu Yue. When he realized he could not prevail, Madara did not panic. Instead, he left a message aimed at Obito and Shisui. Uchiha Obito, Uchiha Shisui, when your ocular power grows stronger, go examine the stone tablet at Nanga Shrine. It holds a secret that can bring peace to the world. Madara knew Konoha lacked the means to transplant Hashirama cells, so the side effects of the Mangekyo Sharingan would likely require one of them to sacrifice their sight to complete the other. Whoever succeeded in awakening the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan might be able to decipher the Six-Path Sage's message and perhaps even follow in his path. Obito bristled at the suggestion. He was not about to trust words from their enemy. Before Obito could answer, Mu Yue's dragon of blue flame tore through Madara's body. Susanoo dissipated, and Madara crumpled to the ground. The legendary shinobi had fallen. Mu Yue damped down the remaining flames so Madara's body would not be reduced to ash. "Teacher Mu Yue." The disciples crowded around him, relief and awe mixing on their faces. Mu Yue's plan had worked. "Mu Yue-sensei, are you all right?" Obito asked, worry in his voice. The other disciples looked at Mu Yue with equal concern. After all, they'd just seen him appear to die. "I'm fine. It's you who need treatment," Mu Yue said, shaking his head. Shisui had given him a restorative secret medicine. His body showed no injuries. Celebi reached out a small hand and a green healing light flowed forth, knitting the wounds on Kakashi and the others. Milotich condensed droplets of water charged with healing power and tended to the injured shinobi on the battlefield. "Your weapon, Mu Yue-sensei." Kakashi handed Enma back to him. He intended to gather the broken fragments of White Fang, add some funds, buy quality materials, and forge a new katana. Mu Yue took Enma, produced a scroll, and pretended to remove the scabbard from it. In truth, he retrieved Enma's scabbard from system space. He resheathed Enma and handed the sword to Kakashi. Kakashi blinked, confused. "This short blade doesn't really suit the sword style you use now. I had this prepared for you from the beginning, but it's somewhat demonic. I was worried you couldn't control it, so I didn't give it to you before," Mu Yue explained. He hadn't planned to keep Enma for himself. He had plenty of options. Not having Enma wouldn't cripple him, but placing it in Kakashi's hands would unlock far more of Kakashi's potential. Since he was going to give it away anyway, Mu Yue had chosen what he hoped was the right moment. Maybe it would trigger an exceptional reward. Kakashi's eyes narrowed when Mu Yue called the blade demonic. If Enma had fallen into the wrong hands, it might have drained them. Demonic wasn't an exaggeration. "So you'll be without a weapon?" Kakashi hesitated. Enma was powerful, perhaps too powerful for him. Using it himself might be wasteful when Mu Yue's use would extract the most from it. After the Uchiha's attack, Kakashi felt the shinobi world's depths. He wanted Mu Yue to stay at peak strength for his own safety. "Don't worry about me. I have other weapons no worse than this, Mu Yue replied with a smile. Kakashi was tempted. He didn't mind the cost of forging a new blade, but a chakra blade with unique abilities like Enma couldn't simply be bought. Mu Yue pushed Enma into Kakashi's arms, patted his shoulder, and said, "Don't overthink it. Your sensei is very strong." With Uchiha Madara apparently eliminated, aside from the mysterious Holy Land patriarchs, few in the shinobi world could best Mu Yue one-on-one. In any multi-opponent battle, Mu Yue could simply withdraw when his chakra ran low. To truly surround and kill him would require the top experts from multiple villages, an unlikely scenario. "Thank you, Mu Yue-sensei." Kakashi gripped Enma with both hands and thanked him solemnly. In that moment, the sword felt like more than a weapon. It carried Mu Yue's care and trust, and the inheritance of his lightning-release sword techniques. "You have bestowed the Great Blade 21 Works Enma upon your disciple. Due to your disciple's immense gratitude, a supercritical reward has been granted. You have obtained lightning-release chakra nature transformation, perfect level." Mu Yue looked at the system pop up with surprise. He had expected only a proficient level reward. A perfect level lightning-release chakra nature transformation was far beyond that. This was a major gain. With lightning release at perfect level, he now had 3 perfect level chakra nature transformations. Seems my death made quite an impression, Mu Yue thought. Had he stayed dead, his disciples would likely have been profoundly changed. He glanced at his status panel. Name, Hayamugetsu. Chakra, 1,044,000. His total chakra limit had finally broken 7 digits. Though true chakra freedom was still far off, this was already a respectable level in the current world. Mu Yue expected more growth soon. Activating the Manjikyo had produced a spike in chakra and usually kicked off a period of rapid increase. Then Mu Yue walked over to the black-robed Uchiha's body. Obito and the others followed, curious. "Wait, Mu Yue-sensei," Obito said suddenly. "Shadow clone technique." Obito formed the signs and sent a shadow clone forward to remove the spiral covering from the black-robed Uchiha's face. Obito usually wasn't so cautious with corpses, but the black-robed Uchiha's methods had been unbelievable. He had to be careful. When the clone touched it, it realized the spiral covering was not a mask, but something organic fused to the Uchiha's head. When the clone peeled it back, everyone who saw the face reacted with surprise. "How old is he?" Obito stared at the deeply wrinkled, ancient face. He felt his own grandmother might not be as old. Who is this man, to have such power at that age? Kakashi thought, expression gravely changing. Shinobi typically declined after 55. A capable one might maintain themselves until 60 or so, and by 70 a sharp drop in power was common. Yet this man looked far older and still had been so formidable. Imagining his youth made Kakashi shiver. "Wait, Uchiha. Powerful." Kakashi began, and the pieces clicked. If you push the age backward, only one Uchiha fit this profile. Shisui and Kakashi reached the same conclusion. If we can confirm it's Uchiha Madara, the clan won't be implicated, Shisui thought. An Uchiha with a Sharingan attacking Mu Yue and Konoha might put suspicion on the Uchiha clan. But Uchiha Madara attacking Konoha was nothing new. It would be unsurprising. Mu Yue sealed the corpse into a scroll and led the team back to the main camp. On the way, Obito couldn't help but talk about his newly awakened abilities. "Mu Yue-sensei, no wonder the Uchiha are Konoha's strongest clan. The Sharingan is incredible," Obito said, excited. He was pleased with his Manjekyo. Versatile and powerful. His right eye could teleport his body into the Kamui dimension, allowing him to perfectly evade attacks, making burst techniques like Thoughtless Blade and Golden Skyline less threatening. His left could distort space into an undefendable killing move. "Shisui, what's your new ability?" Obito asked, curious. Shisui hadn't shown anything especially flashy yet, so Obito wanted to know. "My left eye is a genjutsu called Tsukuyomi," Shisui said after thinking. "It pulls an opponent into an illusionary world under my control. No matter how long it feels inside, only an instant passes in the real world." "And the right," Obito pressed. "The right is called Divine Imperial Throne," Shisui replied. "After using it, it places a mark that lasts 1 hour. If you suffer a fatal injury while the mark is active, the mark disappears and your body returns to its state from 1 hour prior." Obito's eyes widened. "Shisui, that second ability is too strong. If it only rewinds your body an hour, you could. I know what you're thinking, Shisui said. But it probably can't be used like that. I had a sense the technique couldn't be used freely, like Tsukuyomi. There may be cooldowns or other limits, and I don't know the full effects yet. Mangekyo techniques only reveal their details through use. For example, I learned much about Tsukuyomi the moment I used it. Kakashi rubbed his chin. Even if it only restores the body to an hour prior, it's useful. For example, Metkai 8 gates. If Shisui had this in the Hidden Mist battle, Guy wouldn't have needed a month of recovery, Obito realized. Shisui nodded. In a critical moment, using Divine Imperial Throne on someone forced to open the dangerous gates could be life-saving. Are there other uses for my ability? Shisui asked, curious. Obito, meanwhile, was excited about his Kamui. Besides transporting myself, Kamui can pull others in, so if I trap someone inside and leave them, won't they starve? There's nothing there. I could starve an enemy to death. He grinned at his own idea, dubbing it the Kamui starvation technique. If your enemy is alone, and you don't plan to use Kamui to teleport yourself out, maybe, Kakashi said. The idea had merit, but most situations made it impractical. You may not be able to pull in someone stronger than you, and killing them outside Kamui is usually faster. Even though the Mangekyo Sharingan is powerful, don't overuse it at this stage. Excessive use can lead to blindness, Mu Yue warned. That was why he himself restrained the power of Blue Flame. Mu Yue's main worries weren't Madara's corpse so much as the Toby figure on him and the Hashirama cells present. From Mu Yue's chakra understanding, cultivating yang release and yang release breathing might mitigate the Mangekyo's side effects, a possibility, not a certainty. Hashirama cells were his backup plan for Obito and the others. If normal training didn't work, he could transplant Hashirama cells. As for achieving an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, Mu Yue didn't count on it. In the original history, only 2 eternal Mangekyos existed, both through brotherly transplants and both tied to Indra reincarnations. That small sample wasn't reliable. Mu Yue could see only one plausible chance, if each of them acquired a Mangekyo from a parallel world and then combined them. Huh? Are the side effects that serious? Obito asked, startled. The idea of losing his sight was unbearable. He would lose the chance to see Rin's face, the beauty of the world. He immediately dropped any thought of using Kamui to toy with Kakashi, save the eyes for true enemies. Mu Yue-sensei is right. Use the Mangekyo like a 3-Tomoe Sharingan. Rely on the basic abilities, Shisui advised. He understood the Sharingan's dangers better than Obito. Mangekyo techniques were trump cards, not everyday tools. When Mu Yue's team returned, Jiraiya stepped forward to exchange information. He took in their disheveled state, Mu Yue's clothes torn and stained, and asked gravely, "Did Iwagakure make other arrangements in the grass country?" Mu Yue and his team looked like they'd survived a life-and-death fight. Jiraiya had never seen Mu Yue so unkempt. Even when he had subdued the Four Tails alone, Mu Yue had never let anyone touch his uniform. If Mu Yue had obvious injuries, Jiraiya would have ordered the best medical nin immediately. It wasn't Iwagakure. We faced a shinobi suspected to be Uchiha Madara, Mu Yue said. Uchiha Madara? Jiraiya was stunned. 650. The influence of the second ninja god. We were originally fighting the Iwa forces under Kitsuchi, then a mysterious figure in a black robe with a 3-Tomoe Sharingan showed up. Mu Yue chose his words carefully as he reported the day's encounter. He skimmed over the fight itself, saying only that the ninja, whom they suspected to be Uchiha Madara, was masterful with fire release, and that his Susanoo had been enormous. He gave a concise description of its scale. Uchiha Madara, could it really be him? Jiraiya's first reaction was disbelief. The idea ran counter to everything he'd believed. It had been Senju Hashirama, the first Hokage and the man hailed as a ninja god who had brought back news of Madara's death. Hashirama had himself claimed to have killed Madara. Would he lie? As a Konoha shinobi, Jiraiya trusted Hashirama's integrity. Hashirama had no need to fabricate victories to build a reputation. He already stood at the very top. The notion that Hashirama might have let Madara go, then lied about it to avoid Konoha hunting him down, made no sense either. Madara had once threatened to destroy Konoha. As Hokage, Hashirama would not have tolerated that. Jiraiya thought of himself as an example, even if someone he cared for. say, Tsunade, turned on Konoha, duty would force him to act. He could not believe Hashirama would be less devoted to Konoha's survival. Still, if the black-robed Uchiha wasn't Madara, who else could he be? Mu Yue's disheveled state said enough. He had faced someone far from ordinary. There were no Uchiha in Konoha today capable of that level of power. "Let me see the body," Jiraiya said after a moment. He had only seen portraits of Madara, but asked anyway. Mu Yue nodded, brought out a scroll, and released the corpse. Tobi's body had been separated by Mu Yue before. Jiraiya stared at the wrinkled, slack-faced remains and felt his disbelief deepen. This corpse was too old, hard to reconcile with the Madara he remembered, whose power had once rivaled the ninja gods. Yet Jiraiya did not immediately deny the identification. That such an aged figure could leave Mu Yue so shaken suggested strength beyond ordinary comprehension. "I'll report this up the chain," Jiraiya decided, turning his gaze from the body to Mu Yue. "You shouldn't lead any more missions for now." Mu Yue agreed. He and his squad had gained much, but needed to recover and regroup. 10 minutes after Mu Yue and his team left, a reconnaissance squad from Iwagakure quietly approached the devastated battlefield. Kitsuchi had left them to assess the situation. From a distance, they had seen the blue giant vanish and assumed the fighting was finished. What they found made them all gasp. The ground was pockmarked with craters of every size, some over 100 meters across, like the footprints of a colossal beast. Jagged rock and upturned earth formed harsh obstacles. Trees and shrubs were smashed and charred, ash coated every branch and leaf. Elongated ravines gouged the terrain, and here and there blue flames still licked at the ground. "Can humans cause this much destruction?" "Those two were ridiculous," one Iwa shinobi muttered. Though they hadn't seen the duel, the ruins told them enough. Strong wasn't the right word. These were monsters. "We can't tell the victor from this alone," a jonin said, frowning. Mu Yue and the black-robed Uchiha had both been beyond ordinary strength. If Mu Yue had won, Iwagakure might have to withdraw and wait for reinforcements or return to the land of Earth. With their numbers in the grass country, they couldn't face Mu Yue and possibly Jiraiya. If Madara had won, Iwagakure could seize an opportunity to press forward. A search turned up Iwagakure bodies, but no Konoha corpses. The jonin's frown deepened. That suggested Konoha had prevailed. If Madara had won, he wouldn't have ignored Iwa forces. The jonin ordered the search continued, and later they discovered traces of a Konoha withdrawal, proof many Konoha shinobi had survived. After failing to find more clues half an hour later, the jonin returned to camp to report to Kitsuchi and Reshi. "The present intelligence can't confirm a winner, but it's highly likely that Hayate Mugetsu won," the jonin told them, then tactfully exited the tent. "Reshi-senpai, I suggest we fall back to the western border," Kitsuchi said. The memory of an over 80-meter Susanoo and Mu Yue's wood release left him unnerved. If Mu Yue had reached this level, he could be decisive in a large-scale war. Reshi agreed. His recent brush with near death at Jiraiya's hands had dampened his hunger for rank. Survival mattered more now. Reshi contacted the Tsuchikage to request instructions. Retreating to the western border was their call, but pulling out of the grass country or pressing toward the land of fire required the Tsuchikage's directive. In the land of earth, Onoki read the frontline report and repeatedly checked it until he accepted it was no forgery. Hayate Mugetsu has wood release and can create a forest instantly. A mysterious black-robed figure attacked the Konoha force and deployed a Susanoo over 80 meters tall. Onoki rested his elbows on his desk, his face shifting between surprise and worry. He knew Susanoo as an Uchiha ability. A Susanoo striking Konoha's forces meant an Uchiha had attacked Konoha. Was the Uchiha clan staging another coup? Even if so, they'd normally target Konoha leadership, not forces in the field. More concerning to Onoki, however, was Mu Yue's sudden command of wood release. The man had always been exceptional, perhaps another Hiruzen, but this was different. Mu Yue now showed a breadth of power that might rival Hashirama Senju. If Konoha were about to produce another Hashirama, Onoki's worldview would change. With another Hashirama, Konoha would be a superpower. He ordered an immediate response. Tell Reshi to station at the western border and dispatch a small reconnaissance team to determine Mu Yue's condition, alive, dead, well, or gravely wounded. If Mu Yue were merely injured, Onoki would gladly trade the Iwa force's current gains to secure his life. Ninja like Hashirama were rare, and Onoki did not want to gamble on Mu Yue's temperament. Also, he told his Ambu, activate our spies in the Land of Fire. I want the latest Konoha battle reports and anything about internal strife in the village. If Konoha was unstable, Onoki might exploit the chance to unite with other villages and press an assault. He also suspected the other great villages would not welcome a second Hashirama in Konoha. Back in Konoha, Hiruzen Sarutobi read the report from the grass country. At first he smiled. Mu Yue had recently been dispatched to assist Jiraiya. Then his expression turned grave as he took in the details. He thought of Danzo Shimura's dying words and the hint that Madara might have left a successor. But this intelligence suggested the Uchiha they had fought could be Madara himself. The implication chilled him. If Madara had targeted Danzo, it made sense he would target Mu Yue too, the younger generation of Konoha's strength. Hiruzen had no way to judge the corpse's identity from here. Unlike Jiraiya, he had seen the aftermath of the Valley of the End and knew Madara, logically, should have been dead. Yet the evidence before him left the possibility that Hashirama had been mistaken. If only I'd been there, Hiruzen muttered. He would have recognized Madara's chakra. For now, he ordered Jiraiya not to act rashly and sent reconnaissance to watch how Iwagakure would respond. He wanted to see the corpse himself eventually, but it wasn't safe to move it right then, and Jiraiya and Mu Yue couldn't be reassigned without risking the borders. In the following days, the Shinobi world felt strangely quiet. Hidden Mist's forces on the southeastern front had been defeated and many captured. The Iwa force on the grass country front had withdrawn to the border near the Land of Earth. Konoha, once deep in war, suddenly relaxed. Only Kumogakure still battled under Orochimaru's leadership. Tsunagakure, eager for news, wondered why the fighting had stopped so abruptly. The southeastern fight had ended so suddenly because Mu Yue had resolved it. Even Hidden Mist only learned of Yagura's utter defeat and capture when Konoha approached for peace talks. The third Mizukage was dumbfounded. He had planned to use the Land of Waves as a staging ground for 1,000-man reinforcement for Yagura, but before those reinforcements assembled, Yagura had vanished. He couldn't understand how Yagura, who had previously beaten Konoha's higher-ups, could be captured so completely. What do you think about Konoha's peace proposal? The third Mizukage asked his advisors. The room fell silent. Agreeing would be humiliating, accepting blame and paying compensation. Refusing was risky. Konoha held over 1,000 mist prisoners, a devastating bargaining chip. The advisors exchanged uneasy glances. Just then there was a knock. Enter, the Mizukage said. A hidden mist Ambu slipped in and leaned forward. Tsuchikage-sama, the Iwagakure force sent by Onoki, has arrived at our village. The Mizukage frowned. Hidden Mist and Iwagakure weren't at war, but their relations were strained. The sudden arrival of Iwa troops added another layer of uncertainty to an already tense situation. 651. Talks between the 4 great ninja villages. He's at the village gate right now. He says Onoki has something important to discuss with you. Tell him I'm in a meeting. Bring him inside and find out exactly what he wants. The third Mizukage was curious about Onoki's purpose, but he had no intention of meeting with Iwagakure in person, at least not while he was ostensibly occupied. If Onoki had come himself, that would have been different. The hidden mist, Ambu bowed and left the conference room. Once the door shut, the room sank back into an uneasy silence. The advisor closed his eyes and rested, looking like an elderly man weighed down by his thoughts. At his age, he did not want his reputation marred by rash decisions. The Jonin squad leader sat with a tightly pressed mouth, thoughtful but afraid to speak. Among the high ranks there were differences of opinion. Nominally he led the Jonin, but he was lowest on the list of senior officials, meaning he was the likeliest to be sent out to sign a treaty and take the blame if things went poorly. The Mizukage's advisor held himself erect, chest out and expression unreadable, similarly unwilling to break the silence. His post was peculiar. Officially lower ranking among the seniors, it was tied directly to the Mizukage's fortunes. If the Mizukage stood firm, so did he. Mizuyu, tell me your thoughts. The third Mizukage looked to the Jonin squad leader. Mizuyu sighed inwardly. This was the moment he dreaded. Who'd placed him last on the list? His mind raced, hunting for the safest answer. To propose peace talks outright was impossible. That would almost certainly mean he'd be the one sent to sign the treaty. To refuse them would be equally dangerous, too easy to offend. Everyone knew Yagura Karatachi was the third Mizukage's favored successor. If peace talks were refused and Yagura was killed by Konoha as a result, whoever had urged rejection would be despised. He had to thread a needle. The military force Konoha displayed can't be underestimated, Mizuyu said with a serious look. We should investigate why Yagura was defeated so quickly and why half his troops were captured. He'd chosen the middle road, neither blunt acceptance nor flat refusal. The third Mizukage's face showed mild displeasure, but he didn't press. He glanced at his own advisor. The Mizukage's advisor felt the pressure, but had to speak. Without the Mizukage's backing, his own authority paled next to Mizuyu's. Peace talks are a grave matter, he said, careful and circuitous. There are many factors to consider. The opinions of the village's ninja, Konoha's true objectives, and the wider repercussions of any agreement. He said much, but committed to nothing. He could see why the third Mizukage hesitated. After such a defeat, would the Mizukage's loyalties and judgment change? The advisor, not wanting to be left out, added his own cautious remarks as well. Over 1,000 captives was no small matter. Hidden Mist's total ninja strength barely exceeded 7,000. If Konoha executed or killed all those prisoners, Mist's total force would drop by roughly 1/7. The blow to morale and to the families of the captives would be enormous. But signing a peace treaty made the third Mizukage reluctant. Under his watch, Hidden Mist had launched 2 offensive campaigns and both had failed. How would history remember him? Ambitious, but ineffectual? Overconfident? He rubbed his brow and finally said, "Today's meeting is adjourned." Soon after, back in his office, the Anbu who handled Iwagakure communications arrived and bowed. "Lord Third Mizukage, this is a confidential letter from Onoki. It's been inspected and found safe." The Anbu handed over a sealed scroll and retreated to the door. The third Mizukage unrolled it. At first his expression was neutral. 5 minutes later it had grown grave. "Wood release has reappeared, and Hayate Mugetsu may be on track to become the second ninja god?" He re-rolled the scroll and stared into thought. There was history between Mist and Iwa, the second Hokage Ha. D died on a shared battlefield, but that was old grudges. Across the 5 great shinobi villages, ancient slights abounded. Still, Onoki's intelligence seemed at least partly credible. Ninjutsu could not be faked forever. If someone truly possessed wood release, sooner or later it would show. A sudden idea struck him. Could Hayate Mugetsu have been behind Yagura's capture? If Mugetsu had indeed mastered a powerful form of wood release, potentially on par with Hashirama Senju, then Yagura's defeat would make sense. A wood-release shinobi leading a unit could easily overwhelm his opponents and take prisoners, not because Hidden Mist was weak, but because Konoha's hand had been stronger than expected. Still, now was not the time to act on conjecture. Onoki had not asked for an alliance to go put Mugetsu down. He had merely invited Mist to send a representative to a meeting in the Land of Earth. The third Mizukage decided to send a reliable jonin to test Onoki's intentions. Peace talks took time, and so long as Hidden Mist avoided rash moves, Yagura Karatachi would likely be safe for the moment. Land of Wind, Sunagakure. Rasa read the same scroll and frowned. This old man wants to rope me into something, doesn't he? He had his doubts. Hayate Mugetsu was considered one of Konoha's strongest young shinobi, but the intelligence made him sound unreal. If Mugetsu truly wielded such potent wood release, why hadn't it appeared in battle sooner? Wood release was versatile, offensive, defensive, and even effective against Jinchuriki. Still, Rasa decided Onoki wasn't stupid enough to fabricate something so easily disproved. Onoki hadn't asked him to march on Konoha, only to attend a meeting. There was no reason to lie. When Rasa considered the recent oddities in the shinobi world, his expression turned serious. Maybe Mugetsu had been hiding his power and only recently revealed it after a breakthrough. Suddenly, it didn't feel quite so implausible. What is it about wood release that makes a shinobi so dangerous? Does it mean anyone with it will become another Hashirama? Rasa wondered aloud. In theory, a ninja's strength was more than a single bloodline or technique. Ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, chakra reserves, and physical conditioning all mattered. Yet Hashirama had been unmatched in his time, and now another wood-release user was rumored to be on a similar path. Coincidence? Maybe not. Rasa summoned his trusted subordinates. They agreed to send representation to the meeting, though any action against Konoha would depend on how the situation developed. Sunagakure was relatively weak among the 5 great nations. Even if Konoha grew stronger, Sunagakure still had Iwagakure and Kumogakure ahead of it. "And how's the investigation into Yakura progressing?" Rasa asked. He hadn't forgotten the shinobi who once almost jeopardized his position as Kazekage. "There's no evidence to detain her," his jonin replied. "But I've noticed she's been unusually keen on the shinobi sect in the Land of Rain. She's attended Sosuke's lectures twice. As a local hero, she should be out on missions, not taking classes from a faction in another land. If I had to vote for the most studious shinobi, I'd pick Yakura," his subordinate teased. Rasa smiled slightly. "If she likes interacting with other groups so much, send her to Iwagakure. It would be a good way to keep her occupied, and if the Iwagakure matter failed, he could ding her on inefficiency. If it looked promising, he could quietly reassign her later." Land of Rain, Shinobi Sect. Kitsuchi led a team of Iwagakure shinobi into Six Path City. The city was bustling. The wars that ravaged the world had not stifled its growth. If anything, they had helped its prosperity. Kitsuchi did not care about the city's prosperity. Iwagakure valued the shinobi sect because of Sosuke and his group, not the urban sprawl or the ordinary followers. Thanks to their standing, Kitsuchi was able to reach Sosuke's office without trouble. "Sosuke, Iwagakure needs a favor from the shinobi sect," Kitsuchi said plainly. Sos Yukake, referred to in some circles as Mu Yue, nodded for him to continue. "We need mediation with Kumogakure," Kitsuchi explained. "We want you to convey some of our intentions." Iwagakure had declared war on Kumogakure and clashed repeatedly. Onoki feared that approaching Kumogakure directly might backfire, so he wanted the shinobi sect, perceived as neutral, to act as intermediary. The sect's neutrality came from Sosuke's open teaching. He freely shared advanced knowledge with shinobi from many villages, and from events like the Youth Martial Arts Tournament, where competitors from all over had been treated fairly under the sect's management. That reputation made the shinobi sect an ideal broker. "I need more specifics before I can decide," Sosuke said after a sip of tea. He would not help blindly. "The main points are the intelligence on Hayate Mugetsu and Konoha's ambitions," Kitsuchi replied. Onoki had told Kitsuchi to disclose the full report. The sect would not help unless it knew what was at stake, and Onoki believed Sosuke had no reason to refuse. Sosuke had directly opposed Konoha by taking down Danzo Shimura, and given a chance to strike back at Konoha, he might eagerly join. Besides, this was not a request to station Iwagakure troops in the Land of Rain. It was simply asking the sect to broker talks. Sosuke smiled faintly. "Sorry, I refuse." Kitsuchi's mouth went dry. The direct refusal wasn't what he'd expected. Sosuke's shadow clone, the duplicate that had not experienced Sosuke's later battles with Uchiha Madara, offered an aside. If the intelligence made such a stir, perhaps the main body had already dealt with Madara. If so, that changed the calculus. The shinobi sect didn't want to be a pawn in the Five Nations games. Whether against Konoha or any other great power, their answer was the same. Sosuke's stance was firm and principled. Kitsuchi and his strategists had no real reply. Reluctantly, Iwagakure sent envoys to Kumogakure, attaching Onoki's intelligence on Mugetsu. Kumogakure, already heavily engaged with Konoha and not eager to add another front, received the overture without much resistance. In the end, Kumogakure agreed to attend a meeting hosted by Iwagakure in the Land of Earth. When the appointed day arrived, representatives from the major villages converged on the Land of Earth as planned. Land of Earth, a border town. Dodai led a squad of elite Kumogakure jonin into the town. The moment they arrived, an Iwagakure ninja in uniform stepped forward to meet them. "Please follow me," the man said in a measured voice. Tensions between Iwagakure and Kumogakure had grown over recent years, so being treated civilly by an Iwa shinobi was itself notable. Respect, though? That was another matter. Dodai inclined his head and fell in step. He had no desire to quarrel. He didn't like the Iwagakure man, and that went both ways. but the intelligence Iwagakure had provided was too important to ignore. Without it, Kumogakure would never have shown up for a meeting hosted by a rival village. They were led to a heavily guarded building. Dodai noticed guards not only from Iwagakure, but also from Tsunagakure and Kirigakure. 3 of the 4 great shinobi villages had answered the summons, only Kumogakure remained. The Iwagakure escort reminded them briskly, "For the meeting's order, only 2 guards may enter." "You 2 come with me," Dodai said quietly to the 2 strongest members of his squad. It seemed unlikely that Iwagakure would dare start trouble with 3 other great villages at once, but better safe than sorry. Stronger escorts never hurt. Inside the conference room, Dodai's eyes fell first on Kitsuchi sitting at the head of the table. Ordinarily, Kitsuchi's seniority would not have allowed him to preside, but he was the one who had uncovered the intelligence. Onoki had put him in charge. Family ties and merit mattered. Dodai cast his gaze to the right and recognized the woman there at a glance, a Tsunagakure ninja with a delicate face and the Sand Village forehead protector. Yekura, Tsunagakure's hero, known for her scorch release, returned his look with cool displeasure. Kumogakure's prior strike into Tsunagakure had cost the Sand Village dearly. They had spent considerable effort and resources to drive Kumogakure out of the Land of Wind. Dodai didn't feel guilty. Tsunagakure's 3rd Kazekage had vanished, and the village had been plunged into civil strife. Kumogakure had seen an opportunity and taken it. To Dodai's right sat a Kirigakure jonin with a grave expression. He drew up the man's dossier in his head. Mizuyu, squad leader among Kirigakure's jonin. The presence of both Yakura and Mizuyu made the meeting's tone clear. These villages took the intelligence seriously. Kitsuchi glanced around, checked the draft of his remarks in his mind, studied the documents at his elbow, and began. "Since everyone is here, I assume you all intend to cooperate to eliminate Hayate Mugetsu and check Konoha's ambitions." Iwagakure's attendants distributed folders to each representative. Regarding Hayate Mugetsu's strength, Kitsuchi continued, "We will not exaggerate. These are photographs from the battlefields, close-ups, aerial shots, size comparisons. Please look them over." The plan's core objective was blunt, kill Hayate Mugetsu, and blunt Konoha's ascent. A genuine, total destruction of Konoha by the 4 great villages was unrealistic. Deep-rooted rivalries, differing doctrines, and the ethical lines some would cross made true unity impossible. Still, Onoki's immediate goal was clear: remove Mugetsu before he could become a second Senju Hashirama. Dodai unfolded the photos, and his pupils tightened. Iwagakure had been meticulous. Images of a battlefield that looked as if struck by a meteor, ruined terrain with scale references where Iwa Shinobi stood to show the devastation. Since the founding of the village system, only a few decades had passed. Many still remembered Senju Hashirama, and another figure with wood release, another prodigy, was intolerable to any village with ambitions. For Kumogakure, which sought to supplant Konoha's standing, the rise of a second ninja god would be disastrous. Kumogakure's dormancy for decades could repeat if Hayate Mugetsu were allowed to grow unchecked. "How do we cooperate? Speak clearly. Kumogakure will not stand idle while Konoha grows unchecked," Dodai said in a low voice. For him this was simple. Mugetsu had to be killed, even at a cost. Anything less would jeopardize Kumogakure's strategy for decades. "Evil deeds? Do you Kumogakure really call it that?" Yakura snapped. She had met Mugetsu once and found him fair and honorable. Had she known this meeting aimed at assassinating him, she would not have come. Mugetsu had once shown her a path to survival. She would not betray her village for him, but she refused to conspire alongside other villages to lay a trap for him. Tsunagakure might act against Mugetsu, but not under these terms, and certainly not at another village's behest. Dodai didn't rise to the bait. "Do not be blinded by past grievances. Remember why we're here." Yakura only sneered. Kitsuchi was about to mediate when a sand ninja behind Yakura spoke up. "Yakura, don't forget our village's orders," Yakushimaru said with a practiced smile. Sent by Rasa to keep an eye on Yakura, he also stood ready to step in if the village needed a more compliant envoy. Yakura ignored him. She disliked Rasa but had no ill will toward his brother-in-law and was willing to give him a face-saving nod. Mizuyu watched the exchange with a detached amusement. Meetings could be unpredictable. Representatives arguing, subordinates offering opinions, anything could happen. He didn't press it. Hidden Mist had its own reasons to be careful. They had suffered severe losses to Konoha, and their position was precarious. Kitsuchi returned to the plan. Cooperation is simple in execution. Iwakure's force is currently engaging Konoha in the grass country, and Hayate Mugetsu is there with them. We will serve as bait and vanguard. The Konoha force will rely on Mugetsu. Without him, they're weak. He will act. You dispatch elite teams to lie in wait within the grass country. When Mugetsu moves to assist our Iwa force, you close in, surround, and kill him. Leave him in the grass country. Iwagakure already had a detailed joint plan, but first needed commitments before assigning roles. Dodai answered without hesitation. Kumogakure will cooperate. A high-level meeting in Kumogakure had already concluded the same. Hayate Mugetsu must be stopped now. Yakushimaru shook his head. Cooperation is serious. I must consult the Kazekage. Rasa had not given him authority to declare war. His remit was assessment and reporting. Mizuyu likewise, in light of Hidden Mist's fragile situation, said he would have to report to his Mizukage. Kitsuchi expected reluctance. He added further intelligence, more photos, aftermath reports, to impress the gravity of the threat. The representatives left to report back to their villages through their own channels. Yekura was frank with Rasa. She would not take part. Rasa, who had already been told by Yakushimaru that the plan had a good chance of success, accepted her refusal. There were many dangerous missions. There was no point sending Yekura on one where she might seize all the glory and upset Tsunagakure's internal balance. Better that Rasa kept her for something he could control. Rasa smiled privately. Kumogakure had agreed. Hidden Mist would likely agree. Tsunagakure's refusal could be managed. This would be the first time in the village era that 3 great villages pressed a 4th into a corner like this. In terms of force, they could create a Shinobi alliance to overwhelm Konoha. In secrecy, they would be hidden while Konoha remained in the dark. Rasa expected Konoha to suffer devastating losses. If only Senju Hashirama could be resurrected, then all would be settled, he thought with a dark humor. But in the meantime, this plan would serve their aims. The third Mizukage, however, hesitated after receiving Mizuyu's report. There were over 1,000 Hidden Mist shinobi captured by Konoha, including a former candidate like Yagura Karatachi. Hidden Mist's pride and resources had been devastated. A strike that might humiliate Konoha was tempting, but the reality was riskier than it seemed. The captives were likely already in Konoha. If Hidden Mist helped kill Mugetsu and then failed to reach the sea, captives in time, their prisoners might be killed or used as bargaining chips. The chance of rescuing so many was slim. A lost gamble would cost the village dearly. Then an idea struck the Mizukage. Why keep resisting peaceful negotiation with Konoha? The captives were leverage. If Hidden Mist signaled to Konoha that it would refuse to join Iwakure's trap and instead bargain with Konoha for equality in peace talks, Hidden Mist could avoid financial ruin and secure the safety of its captives. Perhaps even the 5 lost ninja tools could be recovered. The cost would be a drop in goodwill from Iwagakure, Kumogakure, and Tsunagakure. But so what? If Hidden Mist became Konoha's ally, those villages couldn't simply ignore them. Better to have Mugetsu alive and as a potential ally or protector than to risk everything and lose both wealth and people. If Hayate Mugetsu can hold against the combined forces of the 3 villages, this is the best option, the third Mizukage reasoned. He trusted Mugetsu's abilities. With Mugetsu's demonstrable strength, the capture of so many Hidden Mist shinobi, maybe the Shinobi Alliance would not be invincible after all. He called for Genshi. Genshi, what do you advise? Use this chance to bargain and stand with Konoha, Genshi replied after thought. Without those 1,000 captives, he might have urged Hidden Mist to join Iwagakure against Konoha. But with so many lives at stake, the safer route was to ally with Konoha and secure their return. With Genshi's agreement, the third Mizukage decided to inform both camps. He authorized Kisuyu to commit forces nominally to Iwagakure's plan, but also contacted Konoha discreetly. To demonstrate sincerity to Konoha, Genshi volunteered to lead a team for direct talks. When Onoki learned that the 3 other Kage had agreed to cooperate, he traveled personally to the border town to preside over the meeting. He intended to oversee the operation himself and had invited the 3rd Raikage, the 3rd Mizukage, and the fourth Kazekage to be present at the encirclement. If Hayate Mugetsu truly had the Flying Thunder God technique, as intelligence suggested, then the only way to be certain of keeping him trapped in the grass country was to have enough powerful individuals on hand to cover every escape route. The third Raikage responded immediately. He did not trust others and wanted to personally see Mugetsu dead to prevent future trouble. The third Mizukage, too, pledged to be at the encirclement site, with elite Anbu ready for the assassination. Even Rasa, who originally didn't plan to attend, changed his mind once he knew the other Kaji would be there. He could not, as the sole fourth Kage present in the 5 great nations, be seen shirking. Onoki smiled, pleased. The Kaji of the 4 great shinobi villages gathering to kill a single man. This had never happened in their era. If Mugetsu had even the potential of another Hashirama, it had to be stopped early. Because if Konoha's higher-ups managed to keep Mugetsu's wood release secret until he neared Hashirama's strength, it would be too late. Onoki poured himself into planning. To make sure Mugetsu remained in the grass country and couldn't slip away to train in secret, Onoki ordered diversions. Kirigakure would send a force to strike the southeast of the Land of Fire, drawing Konoha's attention. Kumogakure would feint along the Land of Rice Fields, suggesting they still intended to open a front there. Tsunagakure, Onoki thought, should appear suddenly from an unexpected direction rather than declare all-out war, which might stiffen Konoha's defenses. The plans moved into place over several days. Hidden mist activity was reported in the southeast of the Land of Fire. Kumogakure units were active along the rice fields border. Rasa, the third Raikage, and their allies positioned elite troops and moved secretly into the grass country. When everything was ready, Onoki gave Reshi, the Iwa force commander, one order: attack the Konoha forces at all costs. To preserve secrecy, Onoki kept a low profile. He didn't even go to the Iwa camps himself. Only a handful of high-ranking Iwa officers knew their Kage had come. Any hint that the Kage was on the field might alert Mugetsu. If he escaped and trained for years, Onoki feared there would be nothing anyone could do. On Konoha's side, scouts reported the sudden aggressive Iwagakure advance. Something's off, Jiraiya muttered. They retreated before. Now they're pushing a full-scale attack. Have they been reinforced? Outside observers estimated Iwagakure's force in the grass country at about 2,000. If another 1,000 reinforcements arrived, that would be a force of 3,000, overwhelming for any standard engagement. We have reinforcements too, Obito said, confidence in his voice. And we have Mugetsu-sensei. We'll win. Jiraiya's brow tightened. Even with reinforcements, we're outnumbered. We've got only about 1,500 on this field right now, less than their main force. Should we request more troops from the village? Kakashi asked. It was tempting, but any help would take time to arrive. I'll contact them, but they won't get here in time, Jiraiya replied, not yet panicked. He trusted the man at their center. Mugetsu smiled and placed a hand on Kakashi's shoulder. Don't worry. Trust me. Trust yourselves. Trust everyone. As the target of the operation, Hayate Mugetsu had already received everything Hiruzen Sarutobi had been able to provide him. He had expected to be hunted. That was precisely why he had held back his full wood release until now. The moment his abilities became common knowledge, other villages would react. During the earlier engagement with Hidden Mist, Mugetsu had deliberately held back. He had captured large numbers of Hidden Mist troops on purpose, psychological leverage. He had wanted to make Hidden Mist hesitate to join an assault. Alone, he could stand against a Kage or two. Against a combined assault of multiple Kage, bringing their elite troops, his chakra and stamina would be stretched thin. He had been prepared that if he could not finish the fight before his chakra ran out, he could use the Flying Thunder God to escape. Mugetsu's thoughts drifted inward for a moment. He wondered about his Byakugan and whether it might evolve further. If it could, his chakra reserves might increase. He had no certainty where any additional power could come from. Still, any increase would help. Although his students seemed to have multiplied their strength, he could not hope for such a miraculous doubling. He would have to rely on judgment, technique, and the trust of his allies. With both sides brimming with confidence, the Iwagakure and Konoha forces clashed in a major battle on the border of the grass country. Neither side tried any tricks. This was a straight-up shinobi engagement. Hundreds of ninja hurled jutsu at one another. Earth release, rock iron cannon technique, shouted the Iwagakure ranks, sending volleys of rock cannonballs toward Konoha. Fire release, great flame technique, answered the Sarutobi clan, unleashing fierce, blistering fire. Gamabunta, oil bullet, Jiraiya commanded. Gamabunta condensed chakra into his oil and spat it into the Sarutobi fire. Once the oil mixed with the flames, the temperature skyrocketed. The great flame burned even hotter, eating through the incoming rock cannonballs. Explosion release, exploding flying stones. Reshi arrived silently beside Gamabunta and spat an explosion release cannonball straight at Jiraiya, who hovered on Gamabunta's back. Jiraiya had already noticed, and he blocked the blast with ninjutsu. The red, steam-wreathed figure rampaged across the battlefield. Any Konoha shinobi who touched him were either badly injured or killed outright. The surrounding Konoha units fell back. After all, this was a Jinchuriki. Mu Yue didn't act hastily. He swept the battlefield with his Byakugan, transparent world, Kenbunshoku haki, and other senses, methodically appraising the non-Konoha powerhouses. Onoki. Skills, dust release, mastery 9,050,000, earth release chakra, nature transformation, mastery 111,200, fire release chakra, nature transformation, mastery, wind release chakra, nature transformation, mastery, earth release, lightweight rock technique, mastery in 800. Name, I. Skills, lightning release chakra, nature transformation, mastery 11,600 to 15,000. Earth release chakra, nature transformation, mastery. Fire release chakra, nature transformation, proficient. Lightning release chakra mode, perfect. Hell stab, mastery, 1,000. Name, Rasa, chakra, 3,000. Skills, magnet release, mastery, 5,000, 15,000. Wind release chakra, nature transformation, mastery. Earth release chakra, nature transformation, mastery. Water release chakra, nature transformation, mastery. Magnet release, gold dust, mastery 4,000. Name, Mizatif Danim 8,000. Skills, water release chakra, nature transformation, mastery 8,950,000. Wind release chakra, nature transformation, mastery. Lightning release chakra, nature transformation, mastery. Yin release chakra, nature transformation, mastery. Water release, water mirror technique, 7,200. The stats were impressive. Even Rasa, who seemed the weakest, showed numbers beyond many powerhouses Mu Yue had appraised. The third Raikage even had a perfect level skill. Mu Yue wasn't surprised. These were Kage, after all, the pinnacles of the shinobi world. Talent was only the threshold. Every Kage had dominated their era. Time to set the bait, Mu Yue thought. Sensing the Konoha side slipping into a disadvantage, he condensed a large amount of chakra and activated wood release. On the surface, this battle was to break the Land of Fire's defenses, but in truth Mu Yue was at its heart. When he moved, the war truly began. Wood release, tree world advent. The ground trembled. Branches and trunks erupted from the earth, sprouting with a roar. Trees that would have taken decades to mature shot up in moments. Massive trunks the size of several people hugging each, dense canopies that blotted the sky. The battlefield was torn apart. Boulders tumbled, ravines opened, the flat plain reshaped into a living forest. "This is wood release?" Jiraiya murmured, surprised. He had known Mu Yue possessed wood release, but had never seen it used directly. The sight was breathtaking. Under Mu Yue's command, the trees lashed their branches at Iwagakure shinobi, intercepting jutsu and giving Konoha forces cover. With a sudden forest aiding them, the tide shifted. "It's Lord Mu Yue's wood release." Konoha shinobi cheered, relieved and exhilarated. For Konoha, nothing was more reassuring than wood release. Those who had fought the Hidden Mist or Uchiha Madara alongside Mu Yue had seen still greater techniques, art, advent of a world of flowering trees, and wood human technique. But tree world advent was still formidable. The Iwagakure forces felt the pressure instantly. The Five Tails Jinchuriki, Han, watched Mu Yue warily. If he hadn't been cautious about Mu Yue's wood release, he might already have unleashed Tailed Beast Chakra to strike Konoha. "Wood release is incredible," Obito said, seizing the moment to take down several Iwagakure ninja. The Mangekyo Sharingan was powerful, but it had a cost. Overuse led to blindness, so he used it judiciously. Flash! Kakashi gripped Enma and executed a blade draw slash, cutting down an Iwagakure Jonin. He scanned the surroundings warily, not willing to expend chakra for a larger strike. Iwagakure had attacked despite knowing Mu Yue's would release, so they must have a trump card. Best to conserve chakra. Earth release, Mountain Earth technique, Kitsuchi roared. He slammed his hands into the ground, unleashing a massive earth jutsu. The ground around Mu Yue split. 2 giant rock columns, dozens of meters tall, surged toward him. Mu Yue ordered the trees to interpose, but the rocks were too enormous and shredded through the trunks. Kitsuchi watched Mu Yue intently. Mountain Earth technique was his most powerful earth release, demanding enormous chakra to cast and sustain. For a moment, he thought he had him. Mu Yue calmly activated Flying Thunder God and vanished, reappearing at a Flying Thunder God kunai he'd already left nearby. He could have taken the hit head-on, but using Flying Thunder God conserved more chakra than standing and blocking such massive earth constructs. What a troublesome jutsu, Kitsuchi muttered. Mountain Earth technique could hardly contend with a flexible space-time ninjutsu like Flying Thunder God. Still, the move had been within their plan. Dust release, detachment of the primitive world technique. Onoki, who had remained hidden above the battlefield, dropped low and fired a transparent cylindrical dust release at Mu Yue. He had been present since the start, but stayed aloof, waiting for Kitsuchi to force out Mu Yue's Flying Thunder God. Dust release's destructive power was terrifying. Mu Yue might not survive a full hit, even with armed haki. Before the dust release could impact, Mu Yue evaporated from within its radius with a body flicker. He'd already appraised Onoki. He wouldn't be careless. The dust release detonated with a violent explosion. Everything within its range, wood, stone, trees, was reduced to dust and ash in an instant. What speed, Onoki thought, impressed. Mu Yue had sensed and evaded the attack. Tsuchikage-sama! Iwagakure forces cried out in surprise and joy. The plan to surround and kill Mu Yue had been known only to the high command. Their reinforcements weren't expected to be the third Tsuchikage himself. Iwagakure morale surged. Onoki was their undisputed strongest, many even claiming he was the strongest shinobi in the world. With him present, how could they not be confident? If I'd come alone, killing him would have been much harder, Onoki said, already condensing chakra for his next move. Dust release was devastating, but its casting time was a liability. Against a master of Flying Thunder God, he might not even land a hit. Lightning crackled, and a towering, heavily muscled shinobi from the Cloud Village streaked in at blinding speed. For the Cloud's supremacy, die! The third Raikage roared, swinging a hand blade crackling with blue lightning. He eschewed his hell stab to prioritize speed and surprise, pushing his lightning-release chakra mode to its limit. The strike was a lightning-imbued taijutsu attack of tremendous force. Mu Yue met it without flinching. He matched the Raikage blade for blade, focusing his breathing and pushing the rock-breathing enhancements for strength and defense to their limits. With Transparent World augmenting his perception, he poured all his power into his palm. He transformed that chakra into armed color haki. His hand became sheathed in pitch-black haki. The blue and black blades collided in a shockwave that shattered the ground. The impact destroyed surrounding trees and sent nearby shinobi who hadn't stabilized with chakra flying. Third Raikage, both Iwagakure and Konoha forces cried, bewildered. How had a Kage from the Cloud Village suddenly entered the fight? Soldiers on both sides instinctively held back. No one wanted the other village to exploit the confusion. The third Raikage himself was stunned, even more so than when he'd seen Mu Yue's wood release. A shinobi, young and famed for his ninjutsu, had blocked his lightning-release taijutsu head-on. If he hadn't trusted his own senses, he might have thought he'd been put under genjutsu. Even if the Raikage's son had struck Mu Yue at full power, the son would have injured himself. Yet Mu Yue stood unharmed. He cannot be allowed to grow, the Raikage and Onoki realized simultaneously. They didn't know exactly how Mu Yue did what he did, but they understood one thing. He was far stronger than expected. If Mu Yue lived, he would surely become one of the next ninja gods. Magnet release gold dust. Rasa seized the opening and unleashed the condensed chakra he'd been holding back, sending a tidal wave of gold dust sweeping toward Mu Yue. If Mu Yue tried to teleport out with Flying Thunder God now, he would run straight into the Raikage's attack. If he stayed, the gold dust would control him, leaving him vulnerable to Onoki's dust release or the third Mizukage's water techniques. Rasa expected Mu Yue had nowhere safe to go. Fourth Kazekage. The sudden appearance of Rasa made the battlefield even more surreal. 3 Kage were now present. Kage rarely risked direct participation, too important to their villages, but here were 3 of the 4 great shinobi collaborating. Kakashi, who had been watching Mu Yue, grew grave. The pieces clicked together in his mind. The 4 great shinobi villages had set aside old enmities to form an alliance aimed at killing Mu Yue, the wood-release shinobi with boundless potential. If nothing interrupted them, the third Mizukage would likely appear too. Kakashi kept his composure. His students were all close enough to Mu Yue to provide immediate aid if needed. "No matter what Kage you are," Obito said, his scarlet Mangekyo Sharingan trained on Onoki in the sky, "if you dare harm teacher Mu Yue, you'll pay for it." He condensed chakra in his eye. If Onoki used dust release again, Obito would activate Kamui to tear away half of Onoki's body. Shisui, too, readied his Mangekyo, prepared to approach Mu Yue and use his rare technique. Divine Imperial Throne was precious and slow to recover, but Mu Yue's safety justified the cost. Water release, circular mirror technique. At that critical moment, the third Mizukage arrived, just as Kakashi had predicted, and cast a defensive water jutsu that surprised both Rasa and Kakashi. 654. 8 Gates of Dunjia Mu Yue, water release, mirror technique. The third Mizukage waved his hand and formed a colossal water mirror. When Rasa's gold dust slammed into it, the mirror reshaped itself in an instant, swallowing and trapping every grain of gold dust, completely blocking the attack. Mu Yue and the third Raikage both stepped back several paces, buying a little distance. "Mizukage, you traitor!" Rasa sputtered, fury in his eyes. There was no mistaking it. The Mizukage had betrayed them. "I simply can't stand watching bullies prey on the weak," the third Mizukage said, his tone righteous. Even when betraying his original allies, appearances mattered. He would present his choice as moral. Onoki, having just finished condensing his dust release, frowned. This was not what he'd expected. Hidden Mist wasn't on the mainland, but it had always chased continental interests. Logic said they should have jumped at any chance to weaken Konoha. Besides, Konoha had inflicted heavy losses on Mist. Wouldn't they seize this opportunity for revenge? Onoki couldn't reconcile Mist's apparent defection. He realized the problem was information asymmetry. Had he known Konoha had already captured over 1,000 Mist shinobi, including Yagura Karatachi, he never would have trusted an alliance with Mist. But there was no if. Even Hidden Mist had only learned what Konoha knew once Konoha showed up, so of course Onoki had been blindsided. If the Mizukage has turned. Onoki's expression hardened. If the third Mizukage had defected, Konoha must have known about their encirclement plan much earlier. Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. Hiruzen Sarutobi, clad in his battle garb, pulled a gigantic shuriken from a scroll, leaped up, and hurled it at Onoki. The massive shuriken split in midair, 2, then 4, then 8, multiplying rapidly to seal off every escape route. Dust release, detachment of the primitive world technique. Onoki had no choice but to use the dust release he had prepared defensively, sweeping the incoming shuriken aside. Lord Third. A ripple of relief and surprise ran through the Konoha shinobi. They trusted Mu Yue's power, but he was still a young man. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the veteran third Hokage who had steadied Konoha through crisis, inspired a different kind of faith. "You shameless old red-nosed man, allying with 3 Kage to assassinate a junior." Hiruzen spat, uncowed. The third Mizukage had fed him information, so Hiruzen knew Onoki had originated the encirclement plan. Onoki's grimness came not from Hiruzen's curse, but from the hard truth. With the Mizukage gone and Hiruzen himself personally intervening, their numerical advantage was slipping away. "Everyone, regardless of personal gripes, this is our last chance. If we don't take down Hayate Mugetsu now, we will never get another opportunity," Onoki declared, flying above Rasa and the others. This was the point of no return. Because of the Mizukage's betrayal, future alliances would be even harder to broker. Onoki hadn't intended to be the commander, only the organizer who gathered the forces to encircle Mu Yue, so he hadn't dictated exact numbers. He only requested elite teams from each village. Even he did not know the full extent of their combined strength. The next moment would reveal who had the greater raw power. Whoosh! In a blink, hundreds of Iwagakure shinobi in their uniforms flooded the battlefield. Onoki's hand-picked elites, all chosen to surround and kill Mu Yue. Almost immediately after, a squad of dark-skinned Kumogakure warriors thundered in, muscles coiled and killing intent radiating from them. Lord Raikage. They formed up behind the third Raikage, weapons drawn. Their only mission today was to kill Mu Yue. Lord Fourth. Tsunagakure units likewise arrived near Rasa. This is going to be a brutal fight, Nara Shikaku murmured as he came in with a sizable contingent of Konoha shinobi. 5 Kage on one battlefield. There hasn't been a clash like this before, has there? Uchiha Fugaku nodded solemnly. Hiruzen had mobili, Zed Konoha's elites, to protect Mu Yue and to cripple the 3 other villages if necessary. Jonin and chuunin from the major clans were here, some with chakra over 20,000 and multiple mastery-level skills. Even the Konoha police force had been sent. If the confrontation reached its bitter end, casualties would be severe. My apologies, Lord Third. Yagura Karatachi arrived with a large number of mist shinobi and bowed slightly beside the third Mizukage. Hidden Mist's cooperation and Yagura's presence had persuaded Konoha to release Yagura early. It's not your fault, the third Mizukage said softly, eyes narrowing. When facing a remorseless force that could become a new god of shinobi, defeat was understandable, especially without solid intel. I can offer a chance, Hiruzen said, standing over Mu Yue and fixing Onoki, Rasa, and the others with a hard gaze. If anyone is willing to negotiate peace with Konoha, I will act as if nothing happened and enter unconditional talks. Hiruzen had prepared for battle thoroughly, but he preferred to avoid bloodshed if possible. Even if they won, the price would be high. Better to bide time, let Mu Yue grow, and let Konoha naturally reclaim dominance. Mu Yue, sheltered behind Hiruzen, said nothing. Peace would be ideal. Too many elites were assembled here, and some of them were monsters with chakra in the 70 to 80,000 range. A final fight would be devastating. Don't be ridiculous. Pretend nothing happened. You just want to pick us off one by one and minimize your losses. Onoki scoffed. He began forming chakra, palm seals clicking as he readied dust release. His movement was the attack signal. The battle, which had stalled amid the confusion, resumed in full force. Rasa hesitated only briefly. Onoki's words had nearly swayed him, but then he steeled himself. He and his gold dust were not to be underestimated. Then let's settle this with our fists, Hiruzen barked, anger flaring at Onoki's refusal. He pounded the ground and shouted, "Summoning technique!" Enma answered, materializing before him. "Transform!" Hiruzen ordered, and Enma became the adamantine staff Hiruzen favored. Black, extendable, unbreakable. Hiruzen took hold of it without a second thought. His taijutsu was his pride, second only to his mastery of the 5 nature transformations. The staff shot forward, extending through the air toward Onoki. Onoki went higher to avoid it. The battlefield erupted. Lightning release, lightning ball. Earth release, rock iron cannon technique. Water release, water dragon bullet technique. Elites from all sides unleashed their full power. Kumogakure, Tsunagakure, and Iwagakure forces pressed to kill Mu Yue. Konoha and Mist protected him. Kamui. Obito's eyes bled as he bent space around the third Raikage's left side. His Kamui negated defensive ninjutsu like nothing else. In a flash of warping space, the Raikage vanished from where Kamui struck. Ah! Obito stared in bewilderment. How had the Raikage dodged him with that speed? Bang! Mu Yue shattered the ring of Jonin around him with a flurry, then teleported to the third Mizukage's side. Please, senior. Help me block the Raikage. I have a ninjutsu that can handle the Kazekage, Mu Yue said quickly. With his Byakugan, Mu Yue had been watching the battlefield. The third Mizukage's behavior was telling. He focused on strong opponents but kept his gaze on the weakest, Rasa, as if oblivious to the Raikage nearby. Rasa's strength was below the Mizukage's, but close enough to hold a stalemate for a while. Mu Yue did not want a drawn-out standoff. He planned to eliminate one Kav fast to shift the battle's balance. All right, the third Mizukage replied with a slight smile. He admired the younger generation's composure. Mu Yue struck him as different from the old legends, unassuming yet fierce. The Mizukage felt the world's balance was about to change. Magnet release, gold dust. Rasa tightened his stance and poured chakra into an enormous cloud of gold dust that swirled around him. 8 gates, gate of wonder, open. Mu Yue flung open the 8 gates to the 7th gate. Chakra surged through him, his aura spiked. He concentrated his rock breathing to the maximum, entering rock breathing chakra mode. The 8 gates made his chakra run wild, limiting what other techniques he could use, but combined with rock breathing and armed color hockey, it gave him a lethal mix of defense, speed, and raw power, perfect for a quick, decisive strike against a Kaj. Magnet release, gold dust imperial funeral. The ground around Rasa began to roil as if possessed. Gold dust rose and whirled into a glittering, rolling sea, an ocean of gold that cascaded like waves and engulfed the area around Rasa. Mist and Konoha Shinobi who tried to help were swallowed by the storm. Mu Yue charged straight into the maelstrom, expression unchanging, as if he could not see the golden wave bearing down on him. He actually dares to take it head-on. Rasa's annoyance was edged with excitement. His gold dust alone could pulverize a man. Now he had layered ceiling effects as well. If Mu Yue underestimated him, that was the opening Rasa needed. Armed color hockey. Just before the gold hit, Mu Yue's body was sheathed in a pitch-black layer of armed color hockey. The gold dust surged and congealed into a massive golden pyramid around him, then detonated outward as if an enormous bomb had exploded inside. A black flash cut across Rasa's vision. His hair rose on end as a primal sense of life or death locked onto him. Experienced as he was, he managed to erect a gold dust barrier in an instant. Serious punch. Mu Yue struck with a full-power blow, his fist enveloped in armed color hockey. That single punch carried the force of hockey, rock-breathing chakra mode, transparent world, and an immense reserve of chakra. The gold dust barrier shattered. An explosion of gold sent Rasa hurtling backward through the ranks, flattening a number of shinobi in his wake before he finally slammed to a halt. The third Mizukage's eyelids twitched. He had expected Mu Yue to go all out, but not with such ruthless speed, knocking Rasa into that state in under a minute. This junior was terrifying. Lord Fourth. Some Sunagakure shinobi, ignoring the rest of the battlefield, surged toward Rasa to press the advantage. Rasa stared at Mu Yue in horror, and a mouthful of blood burst from his lips. His face drained of color. He had not expected Mu Yue's recent body technique to be so devastating. Rasa had instantaneously formed a gold dust barrier and condensed a layer of gold dust armor over himself, but that dual defense was shattered in an instant by Mu Yue's strike. He was severely injured. Why could this guy's body technique be so strong? Damn Hayate Mugetsu, and damn Onoki, Rasa thought furiously. Right now he hated Mu Yue simply because a single punch had brought him to his knees and made a mockery of him. And he blamed Onoki too. If Onoki had fully investigated Mu Yue or coordinated better, Hidden Mist wouldn't have turned the tide so quickly. Rasa had been dealt with far too fast. The third Raikage, momentarily disengaging from the third Mizukage, frowned at the sight. He had expected that even a comparatively young Kazekage like Rasa could at least hold Mu Yue for a while. He hadn't imagined Rasa would fall in less than a minute. For a moment, the Raikage couldn't tell whether Rasa was just weak or Mu Yue overwhelmingly strong. Even Onoki, who was fiercely contending with Hiruzen Sarutobi, noticed the sudden, terrifying development. He silently prayed that Sunagakure's fighting spirit would not be as brittle as their Kazekage's strength. A leader's defeat could either crush morale or ignite desire for revenge. Rasa had brought many Sunagakure elites into the fight, and if they were as worthless as their leader, everything would be lost. Hayate Mugetsu, a master puppeteer cried, releasing several puppets and pushing his control to the limit. Protect Lord Fourth. Wind-release shinobi formed seals and sent razor gusts toward Mu Yue, but Rasa wasn't the only one with reinforcements. From the leaf, Shisui infused fire-release chakra into a kunai and threw it at the puppeteer. The puppeteer tried to block with his puppets until his gaze met Shisui's blood-red Sharingan. Tsukuyomi, Shisui intoned. Blood tears streamed down Shisui's mangekyo as he cast his genjutsu. The puppeteer's face went pale. His hands lost their grip, and he collapsed, unconscious. The flaming kunai struck true and finished him off. Lord Tonri, Sunagakure's ninja cried in disbelief. The fallen man had been one of their most famous puppeteers, an elite, and he had been felled by a single small flaming kunai after being trapped in genjutsu. Metkai poured out chakra and charged into the fray, shaping his momentum into a titanic wind dragon that tore through the enemy ranks. Kakashi, wielding Enma, picked his targets with cold precision, preferring to cut down high-value jonin rather than wasting chakra on weaker opponents. Obito, using Kamui, slipped through attacks and eliminated foes with clinical efficiency. Hell Stab, Four-Finger Nukite, the third Raikage roared, no longer willing to be tied up by the Mizukage. He pushed his lightning release chakra mode to its peak and used his lightning body techniques to smash through the third Mizukage's water release. The Mizukage was no match, but killing him meant little. The Raikage's target was Mu Yue. Hell Stab, Three-Finger Nukite. He increased the charge with fewer fingers, blue lightning flaring. No one in his path could stop him. The Raikage's straight-line assaults shredded ninjutsu defenses. This is Kumogakure's strongest spear. The Cloud Shinobi watching felt a fierce pride. To many in the Cloud, the third Raikai truly was the strongest man in the ninja world. Hell Stab, Two-Finger Nukite. His momentum built. The fewer the fingers, the sharper the concentrated power. The Raikage believed only his one-finger Hell Stab could truly pierce anything. Hell Stab, One-Finger Nukite. Only a single finger remained raised. Lightning coalesced into a lethal point, radiating power so fierce the Hidden Mist and Leaf Shinobi instinctively kept their distance. Could Mu Yue withstand this? The Raikage didn't think so. No one, not even a tailed beast, had ever stood against his one-finger spear. But Mu Yue believed otherwise. If the Raikage's lightning release chakra mode was perfect grade, Mu Yue reasoned, his own armed color haki could match it. The Raikage might concentrate power to a single point. Mu Yue could do the same to defend. Still, Mu Yue had far more options than meeting the attack head-on. Wood Release, Wood Human Technique. Mu Yue poured chakra into Wood Release. Brilliant green light burst up from the ground beneath him. He had just come out of the 8 gates and his rock-breathing chakra mode, where so many refined techniques were unusable. But now, freed from those constraints, he transformed the gathered chakra into a massive surge of life. The earth trembled like something enormous stirring underground. Vegetation erupted under the influence of Wood Release, the ground rolling and swelling as if waves rose from the soil. Trees and vines sprouted and braided together in an instant, forming a towering wood human. The wooden giant shot up to over 60 meters tall and loomed over the battlefield. Shock spread through the ranks. Konoha, Hidden Mist, Iwagakure alike stared at the sudden behemoth. Only a handful of Konoha's ninja had seen Mu Yue's wood human before. Most had only heard of his prowess with Wood Release. What overwhelming presence, Kitsuchi muttered, pupils narrowing as he regarded the ferocious wooden golem. He had seen Mu Yue's wood human once from afar. Up close, it felt like a living mountain. He briefly entertained the unsettling thought. Did Mu Yue see them now as they normally saw ants? What kind of ninjutsu is this? Many cried, disbelief and fear on their faces. Legends of Senju Hashirama's Wood Release still echoed through the ninja world, but the specifics of those techniques were shrouded in myth. Lord Mu Yue, some Konoha shinobi shouted with fanatic fervor, convinced victory was imminent. Uchiha Fugaku watched, stirred. If Mu Yue won, Fugaku thought, Mu Yue's momentum might eclipse the Sannin and even make a bid for Hokage. With Shisui and Obito as his disciples, Fugaku mused, Mu Yue as Hokage would greatly benefit the Uchiha. The third Raikage did not slow because of the wood human's size. He slammed his one-finger Hell Stab into the giant's leg. Wood splintered and light flashed. A gap several meters wide opened in the wood human's limb. It's just a big wooden target, the Raikage declared. Earth Release, Rock Iron Cannon Technique, and Iwagakure Jonin fired a massive rock at the giant. A cannonball hit and detonated against the wood human. Only a tiny nick remained. The Jonin stared in disbelief. The wooden titan's defense was astonishing. Even more shocking, vines sprang up and braided around the damaged area, instantly repairing it to its original form. Attacks from Iwagakure, Kumogakure, and Tsunagakure struck like mere irritations. Mu Yue stood upon the wood human's shoulder, looking down at the field. The Raikage's spear was elite, but Senju Hashirama had made his name for a reason. The wood human swung its massive arms, each gust from those movements turning into fierce winds that forced some shinobi to expend chakra just to stay upright. Despite its bulk, the wooden giant was quick. Its fist crashed down on a group of Iwagakure shinobi, splattering the weakest against the wood and severely injuring many more. Only the most elite managed to evade the blow. The Raikage had planned to strike the wood human's appendages again to disable them, but the third Mizukage had caught up and seized his attention. This Hayate Mugetsu truly has the potential of a godlike shinobi. Even if Hidden Mist loses their chance at the top for decades, this alliance with Konoha, if only for what it will gain, is worth it, the third Mizukage thought. Mu Yue's dominance meant Hidden Mist would never be number one anytime soon, but they had never truly been at the summit anyway. Mu Yue did not follow up with flashy moves. He simply used the wood human. Each of its strikes shattered earth and sent shockwaves through the Iwagakure forces. Even the Five Tailses, Jinchuriki, wanting to transform fully to aid his village, found himself tied down by Jiraiya's engagement and could not reasonably help. Onoki watched the situation worsen and felt his heart sink. Aside from Konoha, Iwagakure had the largest concentration of capable shinobi, and they were taking the heaviest losses. Training a shinobi required countless resources. They admitted only a few to the academy, not because talent was rare, but because they could not afford to support so many. The more he watched, the more Onoki wanted to gather his chakra and unleash a super dust release to obliterate Mu Yue and his wood human in one go, even if doing so would compromise him in the battles to come. Trying to leave? Hiruzen Sarutobi snorted. Hiruzen's battle-hardened instincts saw Onoki's plan instantly. He threw out the enlarged Enma to block Onoki's escape and formed 4 shadow clones in quick succession. 5 great consecutive shots. The real Hiruzen and his clones launched powerful long-range ninjutsu of differing elements, sealing off every escape route. Dust release, detachment of the primitive world technique, Onoki sighed and abandoned his plan to strike Mu Yue. Instead, he used dust release to confront Hiruzen directly. He had hoped otherwise, but Hiruzen was not a random opponent. Under the third Hokage's watch, Onoki could not spare the effort needed to deal with Mu Yue. Onoki's dust release met Hiruzen's 5 great consecutive shots in a blinding white collision. The explosion that followed was so fierce and radiant that no one dared approach. The residual blast alone would have been deadly to anyone too close. Alas, it was a misstep, Onoki murmured as he hung in the air, watching the wood human rampage below. He hunched over, looking much older than before. Hokage, is that unconditional peace talk you mentioned earlier still on the table? Onoki asked Hiruzen. The war had not lasted long, but it was essentially decided. Defeat felt inevitable, and Mu Yue seemed unstoppable. Unconditional peace? Hiruzen replied with a gentle, wry smile. Tsuchikage, do you like to sleep during the day? Unconditional surrender was impossible. It showed no sincerity. He had already offered a chance once, but Onoki had not seized it. Hiruzen had not known the full extent of their strength until they had already begun fighting. Onoki was not surprised by Hiruzen Sarutobi's response. Konoha held the clear advantage now, and Iwagakure's losses would far exceed Konoha's once the battle wound down. Iwagakure is willing to compensate Konoha for wartime losses and is prepared to form an alliance, coordinated advance and retreat, Onoki said quickly. With Mu Yue present, no village could realistically challenge Konoha for decades. Onoki thought of the payment as a kind of protection fee. Hiruzen considered for a moment. Until compensation is finalized and delivered, you must remain a guest in Konoha, he said. What had the Shinobi World War always been about, if not advantage and gain? Negotiating now would minimize losses and extract benefit. There was no reason to refuse. Fighting and killing were merely means to an end. If the Hokage requests it, I will go, Onoki replied. It was dangerous for a Tsuchikage to stay in Konoha, but he was willing to take that risk to spare his village greater suffering. He trusted that Konoha would not seize him permanently. That would make a sworn enemy of Iwagakure and alarm the other great villages. Konoha had no need to take such a gamble. They could instead let Mu Yue grow stronger, and Konoha would naturally rise to dominance in time. Once the verbal agreement was reached, Onoki flew over the main fighting force and shouted, Iwagakure ninja, stop and retreat. We will negotiate peace with Konoha. We are no longer enemies. To limit casualties, Onoki sent out Earth clones to halt Iwagakure forces across the field. The third Raikage's face darkened when he heard. Onoki had organized the alliance, and now he was the first to yield. Kumogakure also wishes to negotiate peace with Konoha. All Kumogakure ninja, come to my side. Stand down, the Raikage bellowed. Most of the allied troops were from Iwagakure. The other villages had only sent select elite teams. Once Iwagakure withdrew, how could they hold out against Konoha's main forces? Even the third Raikage could probably only break through alone. He couldn't be sure of getting his subordinates out. He was also loath to abandon Kumogakure's elite units. They were the village's backbone. Rasa, severely wounded nearby, had already wanted to declare Tsunagakure's surrender, but he couldn't match the third Raikage's booming voice. He barked instructions to the Tsunagakure shinobi beside him. Quickly, announce we will negotiate peace. Rasa needed immediate treatment. If the fighting continued, his injuries might prove fatal. With Tsunagakure's announcement, the chaotic melee ended. Konoha and the Hidden Mist stood victorious. We won. We're the victors, Konoha shinobi cheered. The battle had been brief but decisive, far more significant than previous skirmishes that killed thousands. This was a clash of all 5 great villages, with every Kaji present. In the history of the villages, few confrontations had carried such weight. Jiraiya grinned with relief. Finally, I can rest and gather supplies, he said. He hoped this fight would close the bloodshed of recent years and bring at least temporary peace. Before the war, he had lived relatively comfortably in Konoha. Constant campaigns against Kumogakure, Iwagakure, and the Hidden Mist had turned his life into endless frontline duty. He'd borne it for Konoha's sake. Kakashi felt a private relaxation. The battle had looked terrifying at first. He'd feared it a trap Mu Yue could not escape. 3 Kage had confronted Mu Yue in succession, real Kage, not ordinary opponents. Ninja Master Mu Yue is invincible, Obito cheered inwardly. Mu Yue had been the star. Attacks from multiple Kage barely grazed him, and he felled the Kazekage with a single move. Yagura Karatachi, arms folded and gripping his iron rod, brooded. The Hidden Mist's campaigns against Konoha had often fallen to him, and every time Mu Yue was involved, Yagura's outcomes were disastrous. Once he had lost 5 swords and elites and had sacrificed a Jinchuriki. Another time, his force had been routed and he'd been captured. Facing a conventional shinobi foe, Arcee still left his fate in his own hands. Fighting Mu Yue did not. Avoid him if you can, he thought. Hiruzen watched the defeated villages lower their weapons and felt a surge of pride. He believed Konoha, now with Mu Yue's strength, would rise again. He imagined future histories crediting him for discovering Mu Yue. Perhaps people would forget he'd trained the 3 Sannin, but they would remember the man who found the second ninja god. He knew Mu Yue's talent and hard work had brought him here, but Hiruzen also felt his own role mattered. If he hadn't pulled Mu Yue out of Root, backed him, and granted resources, Mu Yue might never have developed so quickly. In Root, Danzo Shimura's suspicious, stingy ways would have hindered Mu Yue's opportunities. Thinking of Danzo's death brought a dark shadow to Hiruzen's face. Danzo had been Konoha's fire shadow assistant. He shouldn't have died so mysteriously. Hiruzen had 2 lines of inquiry in mind, though the war had delayed them. First, investigate Ninja Master Sosuke. Sosuke's involvement in Danzo's death was seen by Mu Yue and several Rain ninja. The second was Uchiha Madara, but that was harder. Madara was suspected to have been killed by Mu Yue, and with Danzo gone and Madara possibly dead, where to even begin? The Uchiha clan offered no simple answers. As the fighting died away, Mu Yue dispelled his wood-human technique and returned to the ground. Mu Yue, are you hurt? Hiruzen walked over with a concerned expression. He had many things to discuss. Madara, Danzo, even the question of having Mu Yue serve as fire shadow assistant. I'm fine, third Hokage-sama. Thank you. Mu Yue smiled, shaking his head. This battle had felt easier than facing Uchiha Madara. Although the enemy combined force had been strong, his teammates had been tenacious, and Hiruzen himself had rushed to the field to support them. That's good. You bear the greatest merit in this victory, Hiruzen chuckled. Mu Yue's deeds were numerous, even if his kill count wasn't huge. He had captured many Hidden Mist prisoners. His actions had prompted Hidden Mist's betrayal and alignment with Konoha, and he had risked himself as bait to allow Konoha to press an advantage. He had found a breakthrough that led to defeating the Kazekage, among other contributions. Mu Yue deflected praise. Third Hokage-sama and the Mizukage also share great credit, he said. He didn't want to seem arrogant, but he didn't underplay his role either. The victory was significant. The third Mizukage smiled. You're young and promising. When I was your age, I worried whether I could even serve as a competent Mizukage guard. You already have the strength to challenge a Kage. Having betrayed two of the other great villages and seeing Konoha's prospects, the third Mizukage no longer minded an alliance that might last for decades. Rasa, still receiving treatment nearby, heard that praise and grew darker than ever. If he hadn't been incapacitated, he would have relished a rematch with the third Mizukage. He could already picture the headlines. Konoha and Hidden Mist crush Iwa, Kumo, and Suna, 5 Kage negotiate peace, and more specifically, shock, 4th Kazekage defeated by 1 punch. The thought of being painted as weak, like Hanzo had been after a single loss, made him sick. The third Raikage, on the other hand, nodded grudgingly. This youth's talent is once in a century, he admitted. Mu Yue had matched his full-powered lightning-release chakra mode in Taijutsu, a feat unique in the world. Only after Mu Yue used the wood-human technique did Taijutsu cease to be the deciding factor. The Raikage had always believed his Taijutsu unmatched, but today, Mu Yue had shown him otherwise. Despite being an enemy, the Raikage felt a measure of respect, though his wish for Mu Yue's death remained. Hiruzen's smile widened at even the third Raikage's praise. Mu Yue had come to him with cultivation questions before. He might be half his disciple in spirit. But Hiruzen saw no need to take Mu Yue formally as a disciple now. Mu Yue's rise did not wreck growth. Wire the added prestige of being Hiruzen's pupil. Doing so would look opportunistic. Kitsuchi approached Onoki with his head down. As a senior officer of the defeated force, he felt largely responsible for the failure. Seeing the Kage praise Mu Yue and glancing at his son's dejected figure, Onoki fumed. Why were people so different? Kitsuchi lacked not only the strength, but the bearing Mu Yue displayed. Address me by my title when on duty, Onoki snapped. Tsuchikage-sama, I'm sorry, Kitsuchi replied humbly. Onoki rubbed his brow and sighed. The loss stemmed from Hidden Mist's betrayal and gaps in intelligence, not solely from Kitsuchi's command. With Kitsuchi's rank and reputation, it was unfair to shoulder all the blame. Once battlefield matters were settled, Hiruzen had Mu Yue use wood release to carve out a conference room for detailed peace negotiations. It was, in effect, the second 5 Kage summit, the second time all 5 Kage had gathered in one place. This time, however, the dynamics were different. The 5 were no longer equals, but divided into winners and losers. The defeated Kage had come without guards. Having just been beaten on the field, they had no right or need to bring them. Hiruzen had Mu Yue act as his guard at the meeting. The third Mizukage brought Yagura Karatachi with him. The meeting went surprisingly smoothly. Every Kage agreed the war no longer needed to continue. Hostilities would cease, and the 5 great shinobi villages would form an alliance. Onoki promised that Iwagakure's forces would withdraw from the grass country. The third Raikage said he would immediately order Kumogakure in the land of hot water to stop fighting and pull their troops back. The 4th Kazekage and the 3rd Mizukage pledged to halt offensive actions against other great villages, increase friendly exchanges, and work toward the shared development and prosperity of the 5 great shinobi villages. Only the specifics of compensation required heated debate before they could be finalized. History will remember today. A new era of peace is coming, Hiruzen Sarutobi said with a smile. As the second 5Ka summit and the foundation for the second 5 Village Alliance, this meeting would surely be recorded in the annals of the ninja world. Yes, a new era is coming, Onoki murmured, glancing at Mu Yue and letting out a soft sigh. Mu Yue's rise had become unstoppable. The coming age would be his and Konoha's. Onoki could not say whether that era would bring lasting peace or a more terrible war than any they had known. It depended entirely on Mu Yue himself. Mu Yue and Konoha were inseparable. Unless Mu Yue truly chose not to be Hokage, the 4th Hokage's seat would inevitably belong to him. This could be the best era, the the third Mizukage said, smiling. He had already decided to firmly align Hidden Mist with Konoha. Unable to surpass Konoha, his village might as well take advantage of the moment and reap whatever benefits they could. When Hidden Mist opposed Konoha, things went badly. After cooperating, Hidden Mist improved immediate fortunes. They received war reparations, and Konoha even agreed to return the 5 ninja swords to their rightful owners. The third Mizukage was already planning deeper ties, joint chuunin exams with Konoha, ninja exchanges for study, and combined missions to cement relations. Rasa snorted softly and remained silent, unconvinced. He still felt the third Mizukage had nearly ruined them. If not for Hidden Mist's actions, their encirclement and assassination plan might have succeeded. But he knew his village had been defeated. His disdain was expressed in a single derisive sound. Hidden Mist clung to Konoha's coattails now, and if it were up to him, Rasa thought, they'd never stoop so low. If that's the way it must be, then so be it, the third Raikage said, arms crossed. Like Onoki, he worried about Mu Yue's growing influence, but felt powerless to stop it. Mu Yue's ascent was already a tide that could not be turned. Konoha will strive for the best era, Hiruzen declared, standing. The other Kage rose as well and left the meeting room. With that departure, the long, multi-year free-for-all among the 5 great shinobi villages truly ended. The 5 formed an alliance. Afterwards, Onoki, the third Raikage, and the other Kage arranged for their forces to withdraw from the grass country and return to their respective villages. The Kage themselves stayed a little longer in Konoha to settle a few remaining details. News of the campaign's outcome, this concerted effort involving all 5 Kage and their villages, spread quickly through the ninja world. Small nation villages rejoiced. At last, they no longer feared becoming battlegrounds for the great powers. Not every small village saw it that way. A few ambitious ones regretted that the war ended so soon. They had hoped the chaos would provide a chance to rise above their neighbors. In the Land of Rain, inside the Shinobi sect's headquarters, Yahiko rushed to tell Nagato and the others the news. He was elated. There really is hope for peace in the ninja world. If the 5 great shinobi villages can maintain a lasting alliance, then the big wars could end for good, he said, eyes bright. Eternal peace would be hard to achieve. Conflicts between small countries would still flare, but such fights could never shake the whole world the way RS among the 5 great shinobi villages could. Overall, things are trending in the right direction, Nagato agreed. Having studied with Mu Yue, he'd learned to look beyond simple battlefield tactics and to analyze the political landscape. Even so, this peace might be fragile, Yahiko added, thoughtful. If Konoha decides it wants more, it could start another great war, perhaps worse than the last. He refused to get carried away by hope. He still saw the structural weaknesses that left the world vulnerable. If our shinobi sect could take root in other small countries and coordinate their strength, we could help secure the peace, Yahiko continued. If the small nations are united, they could restrain the great powers, make the Kage think twice before acting rashly. Yahiko had come to believe peace would not be achieved simply by trusting the great villages. Those leaders were driven by self-interest. If peace were easy, they would have found it long ago. The shinobi sect itself needed to grow strong enough to watch over the 5 great shinobi villages. Isn't that what Teacher Sosuke is doing? Conan chimed in after a moment's thought. Leader Kakuzu is developing the shinobi sect in Bird Country right now. Yahiko blinked. When he thought about it, it was true. Kakuzu had left to handle matters elsewhere. Forget Bird Country for a moment. Who can explain Danzo Shimura's case to me properly? Kakuzu asked abruptly. News traveled poorly to the remote Bird Country, and he'd only learned some of the facts after he left, long after Danzo Shimura's death. Kakuzu had cleared his urgent duties and rushed back to the Land of Rain to get answers. Danzo Shimura? Yahiko's face darkened with the memory. Oh, right. He attempted to assassinate Teacher Sosuke, and then Sosuke killed him. For Yahiko, whose thoughts had been wrapped around Hanzo's death and the fate of the Rain Village, Danzo's episode had remained hazy. With Konoha preoccupied by the war and not pressing the shinobi sect, Danzo had made little impression. Never mind, I'll go find Sosuke myself, Kakuzu decided. Sosuke was a rational man. There had to be a reason behind such bloody actions. If Sosuke had been attacked, killing an assassin might have been defensible, but for the man of Sosuke's power, sparing an enemy could also yield political benefits. Killing Danzo, Kakuzu felt, had cost more than it earned. Yahiko went with him. If he were the younger Yahiko, he might have believed the simple version. Sosuke killed Danzo because Danzo came to kill him, and Konoha was at fault. The Yahiko standing now, however, had learned that often the world does not answer to reason. Sometimes, fists are reason. Sometimes, reason is only what the strongest can enforce. 658. Response and Triumph Shinobi Sect Leader's Office. Because he was in a hurry, Kakuzu didn't bother to knock. He simply pushed the door open and walked in. Yahiko followed right behind him. Nagato hesitated for a moment when he saw them, but in the end he entered with Konan at his side. Nagato wasn't especially worried about the Danzo Shimura affair. He knew Sosuke's true identity, Hayate Mugetsu, the strongest ninja of Konoha's new era. As a shinobi of Konoha, Mu Yue would not hesitate to kill Danzo Shimura. First, Danzo deserved it. Second, Mu Yue had a plan to deal with the aftermath. After all, Mu Yue was a Konoha ninja. He understood Danzo's standing in the village. Those facts, though, were secrets Nagato couldn't reveal, so he found it difficult to explain things to Yahiko and the others. Kakuzu, why didn't you send someone to inform me about something as big as Danzo being killed? Kakuzu asked, clearly displeased. He hadn't slept well after he first heard the news. Closing his eyes only invited questions. Why did Sosuke kill Danzo Shimura? If Konoha attacked the Shinobi sect in retaliation, how should the Shinobi sect respond? He had lain awake thinking through the worst-case scenarios. I didn't want to affect your work in the land of birds, Mu Yue explained. Mu Yue placed great importance on the Shinobi sect's operations there. If the bird country affairs could run smoothly without his constant presence, it would mean the sect was finally able to stand on its own instead of being dependent on him. Besides, Mu Yue had already prepared contingencies. If he hadn't grown strong enough to confront a whole village and negotiate with Konoha when push came to shove, he could always shift the blame onto Uchiha Madara. With his transformation skills, that sort of deception would be effortless. And his main body's prestige in Konoha would be enough to stage a convincing show, muddling the issue. If, on the other hand, Mu Yue developed enough power by the time Konoha moved against the Shinobi sect, the matter would be even simpler. This incident, after all, had a clear origin. Danzo had assassinated Mu Yue's shadow clone and was killed in turn. If the most visible evidence was an overwhelmingly powerful shadow clone and Konoha was clearly in the wrong, the village would have to weigh the consequences carefully. This concerns the survival of the Shinobi sect, Kakuzu said gravely. If the Shinobi sect disappears, what's the point of keeping bird country in good order? Sosuke, tell me the truth. Do you already have a solution? That was why, even though he had been anxious, Kakuzu had completed his obligations in bird country before returning to the land of rain. Sosuke might be idealistic. He might be naive. He was not, however, unreliable. Things that seemed impossible to Kakuzu somehow got done when Sosuke was involved. Mu Yue nodded and smiled faintly. This matter isn't as bad as you think. Thousands of years ago, the Six-Path Sage used his divine power to establish the Shinobi sect and usher in an era of peace. I'm not the Six-Path Sage. I can't restore peace to the whole Shinobi world, but protecting peace in one region isn't beyond me. The Sosuke speaking here was a shadow clone newly created by Mu Yue after the war. He knew how powerful his main body had become. Even without mentioning the Byakugan that was on the verge of evolving, Mu Yue's current strength placed him in a league of his own in the shinobi world. Kakuzu stared at Sosuke with wide eyes. He hadn't expected such an unpretentious answer. Though Sosuke spoke grandly, evoking the Six-Path Sage, the gist boiled down to, I'm strong enough, I can handle it. As expected of Sosuke-sensei. Yahiko gave an enthusiastic thumbs up. The remark was unapologetically bold. Nagato remained silent. He had never been overly worried about this matter. Land of Fire, Konoha Village Gate. Konoha ninja in uniform clustered in front of and behind the gates, peering down the road. Someone with sharp eyes called out, the Hokage-sama and the others have returned. The ninja at the gate snapped to attention, straightened their posture, and stared down the road. A growing throng approached Konoha. Third Hokage-sama? When Hiruzen Sarutobi and the others drew nearer, the cheers rose louder. Hiruzen smiled and waved back at the villagers. This kind of welcome wasn't given for an ordinary victory. Hiruzen had personally gone to the front lines and brought an end to the years of chaos, hence the fanfare. Lord Mu Yue? Voices called Mu Yue's name as well. He walked a little behind Hiruzen and returned the smiles and waves in kind. Onoki stood before the tall gates, a momentary trance on his face, as if time had shifted and he'd been transported back decades. This was his second visit to Konoha. The first had been when he was 13, when he and his master Mu came on a diplomatic mission only to be injured and driven out by Uchiha Madara. Nobody's driving me away this time, Onoki thought with a bitter smile. After all, Konoha might have a second ninja god, but it did not have a second Uchiha Madara. This time he wasn't the defeated party. The third Mizukage smiled broadly. With the war over, the hidden mist shinobi captured by Konoha would be released. To prevent the mist from changing their minds during the fighting, Konoha had released only Yagura Karatachi ahead of time. At the front of the troops, Obito watched Hiruzen and Mu Yue enter Konoha to the roaring cheers. A look of longing spread across his face. It was a scene he thought was incredibly cool, on par with the top entries in his private list of aspirations. Someday, I can be like that too, Obito said, confidence bright in his eyes. Kakashi glanced at him and said dryly, "Don't you hate war? This kind of scene only happens after a big war ends. Do you want more wars so you can get more scenes like this?" Rin couldn't help staring at Obito when the subject came up. Obito's smile faltered. "Then let's not ever have to see this again," he muttered, adjusting his mental wish list reluctantly. As appealing as the glory was, he preferred a world with fewer wars and fewer deaths. Loss didn't only affect the fallen, it shattered the lives of families, friends, and communities. Obito knew that deeply. Not only was he an orphan, but many around him had lost parents too. Still, a part of him couldn't help imagining something positive. If I'm impressive, maybe I'll get a cool title. The ninja world loved nicknames. The more unique and powerful a shinobi, the more likely they were to earn one. Obito believed Kamui was distinctive and strong, perhaps enough to land him a memorable epithet someday. 659. Mu Yue's Good Deeds. When they entered Konoha, Hiruzen Sarutobi disbanded the field units and personally escorted the Five Elements delegates to their new residences. Akage was still Akage, someone of Hiruzen's standing, and since they were now allies, he felt it respectful to receive them himself. Before parting, though, he pulled Mu Yue aside. "Come by the Hokage's office at 4 this afternoon," Hiruzen said, smiling as he patted Mu Yue's shoulder. He didn't explain why. "It's not a mission, it's a good thing," Hiruzen added, then left. Obito scowled and followed close behind. Why couldn't he just say what it is? So mysterious. He hated characters in novels who talked about fate and left everything vague. "Maybe he thinks it will be a nice surprise," Kakashi said coolly. He wasn't fond of half-spoken mysteries either be silent or speak plainly. "Depends what kind of good thing it is," Obito mused. For Mu Yue-sensei, prize money or a new jutsu wouldn't be surprising. Could it be that Mu Yue-sensei is becoming Hokage? Obito's eyes lit up. He'd thought it over, and it seemed likely Mu Yue had done the most, and Hiruzen was getting older. Passing the title felt natural. Kakashi didn't answer. He thought Mu Yue had the ability, but Hiruzen probably wouldn't give up the title so quickly. Becoming Hokage wasn't that simple. "It's possible I'll be appointed Fire Shadow Assistant," Mu Yue said, shaking his head. After Danzo's death, Hiruzen had left the Fire Shadow Assistant position vacant. Given Hiruzen's apparent desire to cultivate him, Mu Yue guessed he might be placed there for a few years, get used to paperwork and administration, before anything else happened. Kakashi nodded. The Hokage seat was difficult. The assistant role was steady. "Fire Shadow Assistant? That's hardly befitting Mu Yue-sensei," Obito said, disappointed. Mu Yue tapped Obito's head with 2 fingers. "A position is measured by serving the villagers, not by titles. Don't be too ambitious." He really didn't care about being Hokage. His system was a teacher system, not a Konoha prosperity system. Teaching his disciples was his duty. Even if he became Hokage, he'd probably govern through Shadow Clone unless he no longer needed to raise his own strength, and that would be a long way off. His real goal was to surpass the final boss, Otsutsuki Kaguya. He secretly hoped Minato would become fourth Hokage like in the old stories. Then he'd have a good brother ruling and could handle things almost as well. People with ability can do more good from the top, Obito said, rubbing his head with a grin. Don't spread rumors. Fire Shadow Assistant is only my guess, Mu Yue replied. He only discussed it because his students were nearby, otherwise he'd have said nothing. Go home and rest. For the next month, rest as you like, he continued. Black Zetsu still lingered, but Mu Yue judged that alone wouldn't cause much trouble. He decided to give his disciples a good break. 1 month? Obito's eyes widened. Mu Yue usually granted a few days off. A whole month was unheard of. Even Kakashi looked surprised. Metkai immediately piped up to Kakashi. With such a long holiday, fancy some youthful and passionate special training? Kakashi. He wasn't planning to spend the entire month doing nothing, but he didn't want to dive into Guy's special training the first day either. Shisui, calm as ever, still had duties at the training squad. After reaching a crossroads, Mu Yue smiled at his students and headed for his house in the main district. On the way, he opened his system panel and checked their life missions. In a few days, Might Guy and Obito's should complete, he thought. Both missions required fame, and their actions in the final battle had pushed their progress close to the 50% mark. At home, Mu Yue sent a shadow clone to tidy the room and then walked to Tsunade's house. Before the battle, Tsunade had lent him the first Hokage's necklace on the condition of 1 meal a day. 2 months had passed, 60 meals, and he intended to repay the debt. Mu Yue-sensei, you're back! Shizune greeted as she swept the yard. Yes, just arrived. Mu Yue smiled. Please come in, I'll get you some tea. Shizune set down the broom and led him inside. Lady Tsunade drank too much yesterday and hasn't woken up yet. I'll go rouse her, Shizune added as she poured tea and went to the bedroom. Tsunade was sprawled out, sleeping like she had no care in the world. Shizune muttered and tugged the blanket. Lady Tsunade, wake up! It's almost noon. Don't bother me, I'm sleeping a bit more, Tsunade grumbled with her eyes shut. Muya-sensei is back with groceries. Tsunade's eyes opened like someone snapped a switch. What groceries? Fresh free-range chickens? In a blur, she was up, changed, and in the living room before Shizune could react. Oh, Shizune, you dare lie to me! Tsunade glowered at Mu Yue, but reached for Shizune's face playfully. I won't call you next time, Shizune pouted. Mu Yue cleared his throat. That's enough. Tsunade let go and sank onto the sofa. Shizune looked at Mu Yue with grateful eyes. If only Tsunade's temper were half as good as his. Congratulations, Tsunade said with a sly smile. I'm tired of hearing your praise. They're calling you the second ninja god and the obvious choice for the next Hokage. Just say it plainly, Mu Yue replied. Unprompted kindness always felt like it had strings attached. Since you developed wood release and did so well, shouldn't the necklace rent be renegotiated? 3 meals a day seems more reasonable. Tsunade dropped the pretense and said it outright. She'd been surprised by Mu Yue's sudden fame. He'd only mastered wood release a few months ago. It made her wonder whether his talent was extraordinary or Konoha was intentionally boosting him. What if the necklace broke? Mu Yue asked casually. The first Hokage's necklace had been shattered by Susanoo. Izanagi had revived him, but hadn't restored the necklace. Broke? Then you'll owe me 99,999 days, Tsunade blurted, then froze. She'd meant to sound casual, but the number she named was huge. The necklace was a keepsake from her grandfather, important but inanimate. She valued the person wearing it more than the object. What if I can return an identical one? Mu Yue put out his hand. A light green crystal appeared in his palm. He had deciphered the necklace's technique and could replicate its effect. It wasn't easy. Making one took a large amount of chakra, but he had made 2, one to give back to Tsunade and one to give to Kushina to help suppress the 9-tailed chakra. Tsunade's eyes widened. Her voice caught. To be able to reproduce even her grandfather's necklace, was he really the second ninja god? 660. Remove disguise. No, even if the effect is the same, the value can't be equal. The necklace I gave you was made by my grandfather. My grandfather is the founder of Konoha, the first Hokage, the ninja god. Those titles alone mean who knows how much, Lady Tsunade said seriously. Then you don't want this? Mu Yue moved to take it back. With quick eyes and a quicker hand, Tsunade plucked the pale green crystal out of his palm. Although yours isn't as valuable as my grandfather's, it can still offset part of the debt, she said after examining the crystal carefully. Objectively, Mu Yue's necklace had plenty of potential to appreciate. As long as he didn't make identical copies, it might one day be almost as valuable as Senju Hashirama's heirloom. So how many meals do I owe now? Mu Yue asked curiously. Tsunade stroked her fair chin and thought for a moment. Let's count in days. It's simpler, including the interest for borrowing the necklace. Let's say 1,461 days. The absurd 99,999 days she'd blurted out earlier had been a joke. Tsunade knew she wouldn't live that long, so she wouldn't actually expect Mu Yue to cook for that eternity. 1,461 days, about 4 years, was a number she figured Mu Yue could accept. That's a long time, Mu Yue said, mildly moved. You've already had a huge discount. If you keep bargaining, the discount might not be limited to a number, Tsunade teased, rubbing her fists as if ready to spar. In truth, the number was still above her bottom line, but she wasn't going to give in lightly unless Mu Yue made a truly compelling case. All right, 1,461 days, then, Mu Yue replied with a faint smile. Tsunade brightened instantly, unclenched her fists, and clapped him on the back like an old friend. Lady Tsunade, your expression changes so quickly, Shizune complained. What do you know, brat? Adults are like this, Tsunade said righteously, hands on hips. Face in pride, all worth a few meals from Mu Yue. That afternoon, Mu Yue went home and read until it was nearly time for his meeting with Hiruzen Sarutobi. At 4 o'clock, he arrived at the Hokage's office and knocked on the wooden door. Come in, Hiruzen's voice called. Mu Yue entered and bowed. Third Hokage-sama. Hiruzen smiled and put down his documents. Mu Yue, given your performance, both the advisor elders and I believe you're capable of serving as the Fire Shadow assistant. Mu Yue nodded politely. He could have put on a show of surprise and gratitude, the kind of calculated reaction he'd used when he needed favor and to cultivate his image, but he no longer felt the need. When one's strength reaches a certain point, appearances matter less than the fact itself. The official appointment will be announced at the Jonin meeting in a week, Hiruzen continued. Although Mu Yue's response was subdued, Hiruzen understood. Mu Yue was destined to be the pillar that would keep Konoha dominant for decades. Whatever expression he wore, Hiruzen could justify it in his own mind. Thank you for your trust, and the elders, Mu Yue said. It's because you're exceptional. It's hard not to trust you. Hiruzen rubbed his small beard with a smile. By the way, Mu Yue, give me a detailed report on the battle in the grass country where you encountered someone suspected to be Uchiha Madara. Although Mu Yue had already filed a written account, Hiruzen wanted to hear it firsthand. Mu Yue recounted the engagement. Pursuing Iwagakure Shinobi into an ambush, the sudden appearance of a black-robed figure, the titanic Susanoo over 80 meters tall, the crushing chakra and devastating fire release, omitting a few personal details, including his Izanagi resurrection. Hiruzen fell into thought. With those elements combined, the only Uchiha who matched that description in the era of the villages was Madara. It's a pity we don't have physical records of Uchiha Madara. If we did, identifying the corpse would be easy, Hiruzen said, rubbing his brow. If that corpse were truly Madara, then everything fell into place. Perhaps they could even discover the techniques that let him fight so effectively in old age. If not, it was a far worse problem, a powerful Uchiha with no intelligence on him. Was this the same Uchiha Madara who had cooperated with Danzo? Might the real Madara still be alive? And what of Konoha's Uchiha? Perhaps there are sealed documents left by my predecessors. Senju Tobirama was wary of the Uchiha. He may have researched Madara in secret, Hiruzen mused. I'm done here, Mu Yue. Go rest. You've worked hardest of all this time, Hiruzen said warmly. Mu Yue had shattered the hidden mist forces, captured many enemies, and killed the suspected Uchiha Madara on the grass country battlefield, precipitating the joint containment by the three great nations. In 2 months, he'd achieved what might take ordinary shinobi lifetimes. After leaving the Hokage building, Mu Yue returned home. Instead of studying breathing techniques or refining the yang seal, He set up a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone to practice calligraphy. A hobby from his previous life he'd let slide since arriving in the Shinobi world. Back when his main body was still at the academy, he could steal moments at lunch to write. Later, as he became more involved, practice dwindled. He didn't regret it. Hobbies were hobbies and wouldn't come before strength. 3 days after his return to the village, Mu Yue didn't go to Tsunade's to cook. He had guests. Hey, Mu Yue, you didn't expect this, did you? Kushina, am back! Kushina bounded in as soon as he opened the door. Mu Yue, sorry to trouble you, Minato Namikaze said with his gentle smile. Mu Yue was momentarily stunned to see Kushina, then welcomed them in. The Shinobi World War had ended, so Kushina's training had been temporarily lifted. Mu Yue had actually visited her the day he returned, but she'd been under movement restrictions then. I just fetched her after I finished reporting, Minato said. Third Hokage told me Kushina's training could conclude today. Kushina looked around Mu Yue's living room and noted, with a hint of surprise, that after more than 3 years nothing had changed. The layout and furnishings were exactly as she remembered. You've only been gone a bit over 3 years, not 30. What did you expect? Mu Yue smiled, bringing over a tea set. 3 years is a long time. We've only known each other for a little over 4 years total, Kushina said, nostalgic. You've changed so much. When I first met you, you were just a chuunin teacher. Now Konoha's full of talk about your deeds. She remembered worrying that her friend was too weak and trying every way she could to teach him sealing techniques. In just 4 years, he'd not only caught up to Minato, but even surpassed the Sannin. The speed of his rise would shame the protagonists of many ninja novels. If you didn't wear glasses, Mu Yue, Minato wouldn't even be able to leave the house from embarrassment, Kushina laughed, recalling how some villagers had called Minato Lord Mu Yue, earlier as they mistook him for the more famous stranger. Minato scratched his head at the mix-up. Fame had its odd side effects. That hateful old man, the third Hokage, making me suffer boredom for so long and for nothing, Kushina suddenly scolded. She'd accepted training to control the Nine-Tails' power as her responsibility as the Jinchuriki, but 3 years of dull training that turned out to be useless left her furious. I didn't even eat at Mu Yue's house for over 3 years for nothing. Minato's expression turned serious. It's a good thing, Kushina. You should thank Mu Yue for ending the war. He'd faced fully transformed Jinchuriki, been attacked by elite enemy squads, and fought famous enemy shinobi. Avoiding the battlefield was the best outcome. Of course I know that, but one thing at a time. The old man is hateful, Kushina insisted, though she softened when she saw Mu Yue smile. What do you want to eat today? Mu Yue, glad to see friends, planned a feast. Kushina rattled off dishes in a hurry. Braised pork with preserved vegetables, squirrel fish, mapo tofu. Minato covered her mouth and looked apologetically at Mu Yue. He felt bad asking Mu Yue, recently back from the battlefield, to cook. If his own cooking were as good, he'd volunteer to take Mu Yue's meals for a while. No trouble at all. I should be pretty relaxed for a bit. We can do 10 dishes a meal and rotate, Mu Yue said with a faint smile. Yay! Kushina cheered, tugging Minato's hand away from her mouth. With time before dinner, she proposed checking Mu Yue and Minato's sealing technique training. Let Teacher Kushina see whether you two have been studying diligently, she said, smug. Coincidentally, Mu Yue had hit a snag developing a sealing technique, the yang seal. He explained the problem to Kushina. Her confident expression slowly shifted through Konoha's #1 sealing expert to this is tricky, and finally to what am I even looking at? Ahem, Mu Yue, as your teacher, I declare you graduated, Kushina said with a serious face. Minato studied the issue as well and admitted he didn't know how to approach it either. Though she gave up verbally, Kushina still wore a thoughtful look and didn't even test Minato. You two sit here. I'll go cook, Mu Yue said, getting up after seeing the shadow clone had bought the ingredients. I'll help, Minato said and followed him into the kitchen to prepare ingredients and speed things along. When Minato stepped in, Mu Yue slipped the completed chakra necklace into his hand and explained its function. Even though he and Kushina were friends, it seemed better for Minato to be the one to give her a gift.